getting started. The audio should be in, hopefully. There we go. I can hear myself just fine. All right. Say hello. We got Fabio here. We got Hannah. Fantastic. Great to see you both here. Roblox commented way earlier. So good to have you guys here. TV account is here. Awesome. Odd Monstrosity. Good to have you here. Wacky. Yo, I see the Amazing Digital Circus. I click. Oh, yes. We will have some fun talking about the Amazing Digital Circus here in just a bit. Speculating on what might happen in the upcoming episode. Less than a week. This is going to be fun. So great to have you all here. Hope that you're having a fantastic weekend wherever you are, whatever the time is where you're at. Granted, this isn't what we normally do. Normally, we try to shoot for a Friday evening live stream, but things just changed up this week with my own schedule, with finally coming back into town, into Tucson, and so just schedules just weren't quite aligning the way that they had to, but I didn't want to go a week without a live stream, so here we are. The Amazing Gamer 111 is here. Evening, Lars, just in time. Just finished watching Beetlejuice, a wonderful comeback for Tim Burton. Great fun. I still need to see it. A friend of mine, my older sister, went and saw it, and they really enjoyed it, and I've been like, yeah, I really want to go see. I haven't had the time yet, so, or better yet, I think I should say, making the time. Making sure that I make the time is critical, but I definitely do want to see Beetlejuice. So they'll be good. Waffy, is it weird that your streams kind of remind me of Zoom meetings? Like you even sound like a teacher. That is because I was a teacher. For 4 years, I was a history teacher in high school. So maybe that's one of the reasons why I just come across that way. Jiraj is here. Hey, good morning to you. Hope that you're doing well. Great to have you back here on a live stream. Oh, yes. And that's also part of why we also do the writing lessons. It's like, hey, you know what? I enjoyed being a teacher, or at least I enjoyed teaching lessons, and so why not take that skill and combine it with what we actually do here on our channel, which is talk about writing. So we'll have our lesson in a bit. Once we've talked some Amazing Digital Circus, we'll start talking about flashbacks. And I also want to talk today about writing battles and the likes. And this is mostly on my mind. Maybe this is just an absolute Lars topic right now, because after having watched episode 7 for the Rings of Power season 2, I'm like, what is this monstrosity? Like, how do these people not even write like at least a somewhat interesting fight? So I will have my chance to rant and to talk about how to set up good fights, and hopefully you guys can then take that knowledge to the bank and write your own amazing battles. If amazing battles is something that you wish to put into your stories, of course. Drudge says, wait, hold on. Since when were you a history teacher? I was a history teacher, let's see here, from 2019, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, to the end of the semester in 2022. So, yep, there you have it. Fabio, they really have the Zoom meeting vibe. The audio quality too, though a bit better. The way it glitched because it took long for its programs to handle last stream. Oh yeah, there were a lot of issues last stream. Man, I just don't know. I just don't know what the heck was going on there. I was even in an area with better internet than I have here at my own house. So, equipment quality. I will need to do an upgrade at some point. George says, I thought you taught English. My bad. Nope. Say at times it might feel that way, but no, I do not have a degree in English. Never learned how to teach English, though I had to teach English regularly to my students because they didn't know how to speak their own native tongue half the time. All right. So, again, what we want to do this stream is we want to talk about what we think might happen for the upcoming episode of the amazing Digital Circus. And from there, we will then talk about how to write flashbacks, and we will then talk about writing good battles. So, if everyone is ready, let's jump into this. Let me change up the footage that we've got going right here. And boom, here we are. So, talking the amazing Digital Circus. So, we've got a Halloween esque episode coming on out. It's giving me major home vibes from Murder Drones, being in a spooky manner, all kinds of weird whatnot about to happen. Pomni freaking out, Kinger with a shotgun, Zubul in therapy. You know what? Let me see if I can actually get that little trailer. I'll have to quickly pull that off of. Whoop! I'm gonna have to quickly pull that off of YouTube right here. Let me quickly grab that, and as I am grabbing that, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think is going to happen in this upcoming episode? I want to hear some of your guys' thoughts before I start pontificating on my own, because as some of you do know very well, I'll just start going off. So I want to hear from you guys what you think is very likely going to happen, either in Zubul's therapy session. Why on earth does Kinger have a shotgun, of all things? And will he actually fire it? Or will YouTube censorship prevent us from seeing that? What do you think is stalking Pomni? These are all things that I want to hear from you guys. I've got Shay here. Fantastic. And there is a single flashback of which music is done for. Amazing Gamer says Disney immediately getting crushed. I feel good about this. Oh yes, it is so great to see Disney getting their just desserts for how they've abused animation and how they've abused their audiences and so forth for so long now. Finally, justice shall be had. Monstrosity. Maybe Jax gets some crap back in episode 3. Maybe Pomni taking the chance, scaring Jax. That would be interesting to see. I would like to see Jax get a little bit of comeuppance from Pomni. Be a great way for Pomni to stand up for herself. Wafi says, yes, just saw the trailer. Looks great. Heard the episode was actually going to be scary. I'm excited. Yes, I'm hoping it will be exciting as well. Shade says, fire. It is fire. Vampire werewolf dance. I feel like a vampire werewolf dance is going to be incredibly bloody and messy, but we'll go with it. Let's see here. Jax is 100% going to play the jerk even more, trying to scare everyone, and I personally can't wait. Yes, because Jax is a jerk. And everyone's like, no, maybe he's not. It's like, oh, he is. He absolutely is. Let's not kid ourselves about this. Pomni gets possessed. We learn more about Zubul and Kinger. Pomni and Kinger dynamic, and of course, unspeakable horrors in this episode. It's what I wish to see. Drudge says, I want to see the episode delve more into the horror and maybe the Stanley Parable type stuff as well. Ooh. Explain more about the Stanley Parable stuff, Drudge. I actually don't know that, so please tell me a little bit more. I do want to know. Fabio says, man, I barely theorized based on teasers. Oh, that's what we do here. Take the information that we already know about the show, and with just the tiniest of clues, try to spin out entire theories that could eat up whole episodes. Since Matt Pat isn't around, we got to do the job for him. Ivy says Jax is barely going to be in the episode. Yes, but for what he's in the episode for, either he's going to get his comeuppance or he's going to do some really great jerky stuff. Mike, Pomni! Monstrosity, maybe things go a bit out of hand in the manner because Kane doesn't pay attention and gets distracted, resulting in the cast facing greater horror than intended. Rubens, I'm in South Africa right now. I got to hope that there's no blackout for the 5th time today through the stream. Ooh, I hope there is another blackout. And for the 5th time, ooh, boy. who's messing around with your electric cable. I think Jax will eventually do something irredeemable. Probably not. I will say it's probably not, considering the vibe of this series. But Jax will probably do something that really alienates him from everyone else. I can absolutely see that happening, not in this episode, but in a more Jax centric episode. Maybe the one where he's forced to work at a restaurant. Wafi, quick question. Is there going to be a reaction to this episode when it comes out? Since the episode will be coming out on Friday, and we should be doing the live stream that Friday, we'll most likely have a live discussion regarding that episode, but then I'll actually do a very specific review and analysis for episode 3 once I've had a chance to watch it, think about it, and really dive into the depths. Mike, what kind of scares will be in this episode? Well, that's what we're here to speculate on. Fabio said on Twitter he will. Not talking about next episode, by the way. Interesting. I've not seen that. Or is that something that was dropped by Gooseworks? Mojo, I miss my wife, Murder Jones Lars. I miss her a lot. Well, the great thing is that you can still keep coming back to Murder Jones. She hasn't gone away, Mojo. But yes, I do miss Murder Jones. Actually, I'll tell you guys a garden thought that I had. I don't like people talk about having shower thoughts. I've got gardening thoughts because when I'm out in my garden, taking care of my garden, just things happen. And I was thinking, you know what? If Murder Drones had come out back in the 90s or the early 2000s, we would absolutely have gotten a toy line of workable Murder Drones action figures. 100%. I bet even that Luke and Kevin would love to have given us that, but that costs money. And plushies are way easier to make, far more economic than trying to make action figures to sell. I saw spell and immediately whoop, spell instead of sell. So yeah, that's a gardening thought right there. The episode comes out on my birthday. What a treat, Monstrosity. That's fantastic. And happy birthday to you, coming next Friday. I hope it's a great day. Amazing Gamer, Kane's breaking point will sure be tested with Zubal's constant denial of inclusion in adventures. Oh. Interesting. Does Kane have really a breaking point when it comes to the choices of the people within the digital circus? Because he's programmed to in a way respect their choices, though he can always do whatever he wants to kind of counter them. So that is an interesting thing. We'll have to talk about that. Holaska says, "Sup? Hey, great to have you here." So yeah, Gooseworks, according to Fabio, is the one who said it, is one who dropped that. Very, very interesting. Yeah, that's going to be neat to see Jax do something like what is irredeemable within this particular series. We're going to have to find out. Wife says, I know Gooseworks. She's honestly a very good writer. In episode 2, for example, that Gummy Goose scene was actually terrifying, and I will not be told otherwise. I have to agree. Gooseworks is really good. Gooseworks is very much a very different writer and creator from Liam Vickers, but fantastic in her own right. And you got to respect it. You also got to respect how well she's been able to capture that existential fear and yet blend it in with some really great verbal comedy and also some great visual comedy. Not necessarily slapstick, but just like the contrast of what characters are going through in comparison to their environment is in its own way a neat bit of humor. The Amazing Gamer says they'd be harder to find in mint condition than the 80s, 90s Crash Bandicoot figures. Yes, I agree. If there were actually Murder Drones figurines, those things would get a lot of work from the people who bought them. Mojo, be honest, if Murder Jones had a season 2, what would be the villain? Humans, more eldritch horrors, or better yet, aliens? If there was ever going to be a second season, Mojo, it would most likely be another eldritch horror. And what I would like to see, if it isn't just a straight continuation of Absolute Solver coming back and doing shenanigans, that you then just have another ancient eldritch god that's doing its own thing. You get rid of one amazing powerful creature, it creates a power vacuum and draws something else on out. That would most likely be the route it would go, because after Absolute Solver, dumb humans, dumb robots, or even aliens don't even compare to a god that's trying to consume your planet. And there's definitely something to be said for scaling down after such a powerful villain. It works if you have established previously other smaller villains. So, like, let's say Spider-Man saving the universe, but Spider-Man's origin story is keeping the neighborhood safe. So it always feels good to have Spider-Man return to dealing with neighborhood villains. But if Spider-Man started off with fighting galactic enemies, it would feel weird and stupid for Spider-Man to go and now fight Scorpion, to go fight the Vulture, because it's just, yeah, they're small fry compared to everything else. That's its own very interesting conversation, and what you can do, what you should do with heroes after they've dealt with such a massive threat, because you can't always just repeat universe ending enemies, because that just gets boring after a while. King with the shotgun sounds fun. Fabio, irredeemable. My mind always goes to Jax being the clear reason why someone abstracts. I agree. We'll probably find out that he was the reason why Kaufmo abstracted, is probably it, considering that since Kaufmo has been brought up in 2 episodes. Now, granted, yes, he was important for what happened in episode 1, but the fact that we then have a full-on funeral service for Kaufmo, which Jax skips, and he looks very upset about it. And with the information that he has done something irredeemable, that's probably what happened, is that Jax was responsible for what happened to Kaufmo. Metal Slug announcer voice, shotgun. TV accounts, I don't think it'll go that far. I think she said that the show is slightly more hopeful. I think that that's the point at the end of the show, TV account, is that there is hope for these people stuck in an existential crisis, but that doesn't mean that the story can't go dark from time to time, which is what it has already done in its first 2 episodes. Like Gummy Goo, seeing that he's like learning the truth of what he is, Pomni having her brain melt twice in the opening, having to deal with the abstracts, realizing that there's a whole bunch of people who are imprisoned, abstracting underneath the digital circus. That's all some really dark stuff. Odd Monstrosity says irredeemable would be Jax purposely trying to cause one of the cast candidates, being Pomni, Kinger, and Gangle, to abstract. Which he might try to do that to them. Though I think that he probably is the reason why Kaufmo abstracted, if I'm going to be all honest, the more I think about it. The Amazing Gamer 111, one of my favorite villain buildups is when one goes down, the stronger runner steps up into the picture. Yes. it's the video game boss tier thing. You beat one boss, but little did you know that boss was keeping you safe from everything else that was coming. Actually, real quick, there's a manhwa that I really, really wish would get way more attention. It's called The Game is Murder. Or I believe actually it's The Game is Murder to Me, because if you put into a Google search The Game is Murder, you get another manhwa entirely. The Game is Murder to Me is an incredibly dark manhwa about people who go, like, it's not just humans, but aliens from all over the universe have all patched into this virtual reality game. And when they go into it, they get to experience everything that their avatars do. And there's this alien who goes around brutally murdering and torturing people throughout the first arc of the series, and so all of these characters from all over the universe are like getting together to stop her. And little do they know that she's basically preventing them from experiencing even worse things should they continue to level up in the game and progress. And that was a horrible realization. They're like, yes, they defeated her. I love it. And then you're like, oh no. And like some of the game NPCs are all like, yeah, good luck with this now. You guys are in for a world of hurt. And it's that is a strange. The artwork for the Game is Murder to me is kind of silly, but wow, it is such an intense story. It's really good. Let's see here. Let me catch up with some you guys are saying. I think that people believe the Amazing Digital Circus is replacing Murder Drones. Might actually be onto something. The Amazing Digital Circus gets to be on Netflix, not Murder Drones. You gotta be kidding me. Okay, then. I am going to cut this at the knees. No, the Amazing Digital Circus is not replacing Murder Drones. If we go back to Glitch X last year, before the Amazing Digital Circus even landed its pilot episode, what we actually got to see was that Glitch was saying that they were already going to take on the Gaslight District and had started production for it. Glitch is a small company with 50 people to work at that time on 3 shows. That is insane. That is such a stretch of budget and personnel. The only reason why they could do that and get away with, if any of you remember Anime America, then accusing them of abusing their workers, and one of the reasons why they could prove that they weren't was not just because of a paper trail, but because workers were already shifting away from doing 3 projects to just 2. Murder Drones was going to wrap up. Liam had only ever pitched 1 season, and that is who he is. That isn't Glitch. Glitch would have loved to have gotten more seasons, and they can make more seasons if they wish because they own the story. Liam only pitched 1 season because Liam is a one-and-done guy. Once he's done with the project, he moves on. Anyone who's been waiting for him to finish Internecian Cube and Cliffside should know this is how this guy operates. And it was his pitch. This was said even months and months and months ago by Luke and Kevin, that he was the one who had the vision from the beginning of what to do. Liam himself, even before we knew that there was only going to be 1 season, that was confirmed that there was only going to be 1 season, he had said, everything that's happening is my choice. And that was before announcements. That was months, half a year before any announcements began coming on out. Because that is the case, we can easily and confidently assume that Murder Drones was only ever going to get 1 season. It was big for Glitch. Glitch can do more with it if they wish, but 1 season is what Liam gave them, and he's already moved on. The Amazing Digital Circus has got picked up by Netflix because Netflix needs these views. The Amazing Digital Circus has more than 400 million views. Now, granted, a lot of those are repeated views, but those are largely views from a demographic that Hollywood believes cannot be captured. 18 to 30-year-olds. Hollywood refuses to cater to them because they believe it's a black hole that people of that demographic will not watch stuff that they will not shell out money for entertainment. This is obviously a fallacy, but Hollywood believes it to their core. The Amazing Digital Circus shatters that perception with more than 400 million views and the fact that Glitch is making bank based off of merchandise sales. So because of that, Netflix is looking at us and be like, holy cow, if we can even get like 10 million of those views, That would be huge. Imagine what kinds of new customers we could get. And then we make more money. And they can do it at a fraction of the price because they are allowing Glitch to maintain total creative control, ownership, and simultaneous streaming on YouTube, which means that Netflix doesn't even have to pay top dollar for the rights to stream the Amazing Digital Circus. Now then, one more kicker to put to this. There were a lot of people bragging about how Bridgerton had the third largest opening of any Netflix series, only behind Stranger Things and Squid Games. In the exact same amount of time that Bridgerton had gotten, it was, I think, 45 to 48 million views within a 48-hour period. And that's huge. That's big. The Amazing Digital Circus Episode 2 had almost 55 million views. And that broke Netflix's mind. That was huge. That an indie animation was beating their third best series. And so Netflix, for a small price, can experiment right here. What if it's possible to have this indie company do the job for us? We pay them a little bit of money, then we get to show it on our streaming platform. And if we can even get a tenth of what they got, that could be big for us. That's so many millions of customers, and we only have to pay them a small amount of money. That is most likely where Netflix is coming from. And for Glitch, who needs, again, the funding so that way they can take on bigger and better projects. And I think that they do really, because, again, of what happened with Murder Drones, I think they would love to be able to say that they could work on 3 shows simultaneously. That would be huge for them. But they need the capital to make that happen. And Netflix could be the one who actually gives them that drip feed in order to make that happen. And so that is why you have this going on. There's all kinds of machinations and whatnot going on in the background. Murder Drones' ending was already in the can a year ago. And we as fans just have to accept that. It's hard for many of us because it's such a great show and we see the potential for so much more. But Liam is done. He's moved on. And Glitch has to move on as well. And they've been working on doing that move on now for a while. Stuff like this doesn't just happen. This has been a year in the making. Now then, Netflix making this deal, that is actually far more recent than anything else. And I think that's because they were shocked by what the Amazing Digital Circus has been doing. So then, coming back to this, Wafi says, here's what I think is going to happen. Small little concept prediction. Kinger is going to see a ghost creature. He's going to try and shoot it, but the weapons of Cain adventures don't actually work. Ooh. Oh, that'd be great to see. Mike, the big bag defeated. For now, what to do? Mojo says the Amazing Digital Circus on Netflix, not Murder Drones before GTA 6 is crazy. It is what it is. TV count. I am banking on death going after as gets some character arc before straight up dying. I'm sorry, TV count. I think we're missing the important bit of which character is going to go through that horrible character arc. George, by the way, I just got into the Little Nightmares fandom, and now I'm going to go hug Mono and comfort him. Go ahead and comfort. Dorcas Daydreams. Oh, it's already started. Yes, welcome. Wafi, Mojo. Actually, Glitch couldn't put it on Netflix like they tried, but couldn't. I don't know what's all been going on behind there, and if they did talk with Netflix about potentially putting Murder Drones on, if they have been talking about it, I've missed that. But I wouldn't doubt that they would really love to put Murder Drones onto Netflix. That would be a huge boost for them. But that comes down to what Netflix says that they want to do. And Netflix is weird. Netflix has asked how many shows that were really good. So, yeah. The Amazing Gamer says, seeing how Murder Drones had a happy ending, it's any guess how the Amazing Digital Circus will end. Imagine Goose left the series on the idea that there really is no escape. It fits the dark stuff they write. That could happen. I could see it happening. Fabio, oh yeah, I much prefer the villain getting beaten and the bigger threat showing up instead of the bigger villain threat getting rid of the previous villain before the hero gets a lick in. Yeah, no, that's kind of dumb. I like to see the heroes actually earn their victories. All Monstrosity, what's interesting is that the possible way of the story's development is hinted in the pilot at the end, with the cast reenacting the famous Jesus image of the Last Supper with Pomni in Jesus' place. Mike, oh no, Pomni will die for our sins. The Amazing Gamer says, do we think episode 3 could be when the series begins fully building up the CNA hint from the pilot? I think so, especially because since we're going to be exploring stuff with Kinger as a bigger supporting character within this episode, I think that we're going to learn some stuff through Kinger, not necessarily from him actually explaining a whole lot, but from his brief moments of lucidity, where he actually is his real self and not his whacked out self, that we're going to get some hints from Kinger about the nature of the Amazing Digital Circus, or who was actually behind creating it. The Amazing Gamer says, let's remember, folks, Netflix offered Glitch to have Murder Drones on Netflix as long as the name was changed to Meta Drones, and Glitch said no. They turned down the Netflix. The Amazing Digital Circus stole nothing from Murder Drones, period. Exactly. Dana says, Netflix loves money. Oh, yes. Oh, they do. Roblox says Murder Drones is its own thing. The only relationship between it and the Amazing Digital Circus is Glitch, and Glitch's goal is to let as many aspiring creators share their stories. Yes, and that's what they're doing, and it is fantastic. And I was actually having this conversation with my family earlier today about how Glitch has been working on helping, for instance, Tracy Butler get Lackadaisy off the ground by allowing her to sell her own merch through their store and then sending all the proceeds to her project. I think that is great. That is a real bro move right there. ISO, this is way earlier than I thought it would be. I guess going to be here for a while. That's fantastic, ISO. Great to have you here. Wafi, also, I know this is just episode 3, but here's what I think would be cool if in the finale of the Amazing Digital Circus, Pomni would come face to face with giant abstractions in the cellar, but she's not scared, but brave. And that would be great to see. Pomni needs to have a little bit of a backbone. And I think she's going to start growing it, especially after a spooky episode. It would show how far she has come as a person. TV account. I think my idea for Murder Drone Season 2 would be Death going after the Absolute Solver. Oh, okay, I get it now. And maybe give it a character arc before the Absolute Solver straight up dies and sacrifices itself. So potentially making Absolute Solver a redeemable character. I see what you're going right there. Hannah Heaven says that's understandable. Mike, as long as Netflix doesn't usurp control, it's all in the contract. It's all in the contract. Now then, I would love to know what's all in there. We probably will never know because that's legal stuff, and Netflix likes to play that kind of stuff close to the chest. All that we do know is that Glitch has retained absolute creative control over the project. Roblox is down, says the Absolute Solver is a tool to be used and can barely be considered a character. In a way, Roblox, what we do see is that the entity that becomes known as Absolute Solver does have its own twisted personality that is also an amalgamation of many different things, which, guys, I have not forgotten to do my massive retrospective on Murder Drones. It is incoming. There's just so many other things that are also on my plate as well. So it will be done, just not by next week. ISO says, and that's why I'm working on my own things now. Murder Drones is over, but that doesn't mean everything good is over. We just have to make our own good things. Amen, ISO. Amen. That is the proper way to view the situation. And it's always there for you to go back and enjoy. And there's always going to be new people that you can introduce it to who are going to love it. TV account. I think it's more ethical this way and would be good PR for Netflix, so they won't get canceled for any creative butchering. So I'd say, as I say, Netflix doesn't care about good stories. They care about income and popularity. Yep, that's what they care about. TV account. I mean the Absolute Solver. Sorry. Dorcas Daydreams. I don't like the comparisons between the last scene of episode 1 and the Last Supper. And you know what, Dorcas? If you're not okay with that, that's absolutely fine. And that's just one interpretation of what could actually be going on there in that scene. We don't know. I know that there's a lot of people who are wondering about the potential of a Cain and Abel parallel to what's going on within at least the backstory for the Amazing Digital Circus. And I would need a little bit more information from the people who espouse that particular theory because I'm like, okay, where's that coming from? Is it just simply from the CNA? Because if we're going to talk CNA, there's a fantastic line of ties from CNA, which is a clothing company. And the CNA ties are nice. Let's see here. The Amazing Gamer 111 says, I've already bought every piece of Lackadaisy Rocky merch, as well as buying the Mordecai Tater Cat plush for my boyfriend. That's fantastic. Awesome. I wish I had more disposable income to throw at all of that amazing merchandise. I do have the comic books that I got from helping back season 1, and those are gorgeous. Fabio, do tell if there will be character design talk or not. Some other stream. Fabio, there will be. I was actually just talking with a friend of mine. You can actually check out their channel if you wish. Zaza Inc. I will put that here in the into the chat. I was talking with them about potentially doing a team up in the upcoming weeks. I don't yet know of a specific time that we will do it, but that is something that we already have been talking about, to do a character design live stream. So don't you worry, it's something that we want to do. I gotta get a drink of water. Darkest Daydream, the CNA, Cain and Abel theory just gives me another reason to dislike Cain. I'm already telling you, he's a dirty brother killer. Roblox, the one about Cain and Abel. Well, who really knows? Who really knows? Again, if we're going to go off of what some of the stuff that Gooseworks has said in the past, it's more like Cain is just a monstrosity that could be an amazing person or an amazing thing, but is lacking the sense of maturity and morality to really point him in the right direction, because he doesn't understand humans, for one thing. He doesn't understand really how they think or how they feel, and so he can't actually be the right kind of person to help them through any sort of trauma, which is why I believe that the therapy session between him and Zubul is going to be an absolute mess. Because Cain can't empathize. And if you actually want a really good example of this in another story, what I would do is I would suggest you to check out Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. There is a sword called Nightblood, which was created and given sentience, given life to destroy evil. And so it's a sword that believes it's doing good. It believes that it's righteous. And it's an interesting sword for anyone to talk to. But the problem is that it doesn't understand what is evil versus what's just not good. Like, someone could do something that's not good, but that doesn't make them evil. All of us make mistakes. All of us have something that we're not proud of. But does that make us evil? But Nightblood doesn't understand the difference. And so Nightblood thinks that everyone is evil unless they can somehow prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're 100% good. And so Nightblood is a sword that will murder anyone. It will take possession of their body and have them do horrible things because it thinks it's doing good. And that's just because it doesn't understand the difference. And so that is an excellent, like, if you want to read that in detail, read Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. That is a fun book. It's not his best book, but Nightblood is definitely an interesting character in all of that. Victor M is here. Excellent. What if Cain snaps his fingers and everyone except Cain dies in episode 2? Well, episode 2 is already come and gone, so that's not going to happen. It didn't happen, and Cain wouldn't do that because it goes against his programming. Moja, I did make my own Murder Drone sequel story, Murder Drone's Overlord. Well, fantastic. Hope you're sharing it with people. I'm guessing Sunset Paradise and Metarunner are the Go Ranger and JAKQ of glitches. Yeah. I'd say that is the case. Wafi, I know the Amazing Digital Circus isn't based around fighting, but I wonder if there's going to be fight scenes. I think that there will be action scenes. I don't know if like a straight up fight scene will really happen. We might though get a good action / fight scene in this next episode, considering that we're dealing with horror. Let's see here. Monstrosity says, with Murder Drones being over, I think it's safe to say that quite a number of fans are sitting on hot coals for Liam's possible next project, or generally what will he be working on next. Yes. Roblox Down says, I think the theory came from film theory. Oh, I didn't know that film theory is one that espoused that. What are the chances of CNA being the initials for the founder Cain and Abel, and Cain's AI being a replication of the human consciousness as the showrunner? It's possible. And Kinger would be the one to probably know that, considering that in his lucid moments, he seems to know quite a bit of what's going on. He's aware, but whatever has happened to him that's addled his brain, either from being in the circus for so long or whatever happened when he crossed on over, the information is just not there. It's because of his insanity that we don't know. Wife says, it's sad now. It's sad because now that Murder Drones is over, the hate for the Amazing Digital Circus is going to be stronger. I know some Murder Drones fans hate the show because of its success, and so now that it's over, people are going to hate it more. And yeah, and for that, people are just going to have to grow up. I have been in fandom long enough to see all of this come and go. I've been in that position as a kid and as a teenager, where I was like, no, this is not okay. Why would you cancel this show? And then coming back to it as an adult later, I'm like, oh no, I understand now why the show ended. Because the story ended, or because things were happening behind the scenes. And for us, we just have to be happy that Murder Drones had its run. It was great. And it's inspired so many people. The artwork is fantastic. The merch is awesome, and it's still up there. And there's a chance it might come back in some way or another. So don't end up hating something just because something good is done. Love it. Find the next thing to love. Let's hear. Monstrosity says, great non-villain is Kube from Puella Madoka Magica. I have not seen Puella Madoka Magica, so unfortunately I can't comment on that, Monstrosity. The Amazing Gamer says, if I had to guess from Goose's Twitter post on how episode 3 won't be mega scary, I can have said the seeing be a more Luigi's Mansion kind of deal. Okay, so if it's not going to be that spooky, that kind of amends some of the stuff that I wanted to share here in just a moment. I saw, hey, Pomni becomes an admin and fights Cain to free the others. Hey, that'd be interesting to see. Mike pre-program Cain so he has empathy. Yeah, please do it. Save Zubul from the torture. Fabio, I asked if the character's design stream will be here or at Zaza. Okay, Fabio, I missed that. That will be here. That will be here on our channel, at least at first. Zaza has been wanting to do some of their own live streams with character designs and drawings and whatnot. And we'll definitely host some of those on their own channel. But for specifically talking character design, the way that we would talk about it in terms of as writers, we will be doing that here on our channel. And that's just, again, that's something that we have to figure out. We have to make sure that our schedules properly align to make that happen. But when we can make that happen, we definitely will, and we will let you and everyone else know ahead of time what we're planning for that week. As a massive Murder Drones fan, I could not be happier for the Amazing Digital Circus's success. I feel like Liam deserved more, but Gooseworks absolutely deserves the popularity. And I agree with that. I would love for more people to discover Murder Drones because it's so dang good. And especially for the Halloween season, this is the perfect time to share Murder Drones with people. But I love what has happened with the Digital Circus. I think it's great. And it's very vindicating to someone like me, who's an independent author who supports indie animation and wants to see bolder stories go against the norm of what Hollywood says is okay and what they support. I think this is great. Wafi, to be honest, I think the real villain of the Amazing Digital Circus is abstraction, like it's a force of nature type of villain. Hope we can learn more about that soon. I like that idea. I like the idea of there not being necessarily one specific villain, but rather a state of mind and a state of being that has to be overcome, because that fits in way better with an existential crisis. If your opponent is a monster or a person of some kind, you can face them and you can defeat them. Unless you're in a Lovecraftian story, then you gotta probably avoid the person or thing that is causing you all of that spookiness. But essentially speaking, with an existential crisis, like the idea of dealing with the inevitability of death, or just the passage of time, or what happens with an illness that you just can't escape. Those kinds of things that people are afraid of, that creates an existential crisis. Those are things that you can't beat. So how do you deal with something that can't be killed, destroyed, morphed somehow? I think I think that would be great to see that be the ultimate final obstacle to overcome. The monstrosity, if I'm actually right with the Jesus reference, then who would be Judas? I mean, if that's the case, then we already know who the Judas character is. It's Jax. Haha! Amazing Gamer says, gotta wonder who programmed the abstraction to happen for people who go mad. Couldn't be for no reason. It feels like a coding protocol or a failsafe if the characters begin to stray. And Amazing Gamer, I think that it's probably something that happens if you stray. What if you go against the purpose of this digital circus and you can't either face your crisis or you try to escape so much that you go insane and the system doesn't know how to process your insanity properly, and thus you begin to abstract. That could be the case. We'll have to find out. I also love how Gooseworks is using her popularity to promote Liam and murder drones. Yes, that is a great thing. I love seeing that. Failsafe, that became a glitch. Aha! A glitch. Glitch Productions. The real villain for the digital circus is Jax. Dude is a menace to existence itself. Yes. Well, exactly. That's why I find abstraction to be a really good villain per se. It doesn't have a physical form unless it's someone who's abstracted. You cannot fight it. You cannot beat it. Yes, or at least beating it comes in a way that is metaphysical, that's personal, rather than something that goes pew pew, bang bang, boom, swish swish with the sword. Which, as someone who likes to write the idea, like in my series, the Legend of the Ten Lords, because it's a magic system that's based on people's imagination. Your thoughts, your existential crisis can take on physical form, and can be fought. However, there's actually one character who is dealing with depression and with guilt. Then they take on physical form, and he actually kills his depression and his guilt time and time and time again, but they always come back because it's not something that he can kill and get rid of. It is a personal problem that he must resolve and live with. And so I've enjoyed writing that into that series. The human mind is very complex, so it makes sense how a 90s computer program can't comprehend insanity. Yes, I like that. Amazing Gamer says, imagine if the digital circus goes a Lego movie and the models escape in the real world. Imagine abstractions in real life. Oh my. Oh, that'd be awful. At the same time, did someone make that VR that sucks in the 90s with what? Hey, I mean, there was already, if we think back to the late 70s, early 80s, there were already people talking about creating visual reality. They just didn't know in what kind of form it would take. And that's actually one of the things that made Tron such an interesting concept as a story, about people going into a video game world, and people are wondering how the heck were you going to make that work. Tron was really a great exploration into that concept. All right. So I'm going to read what Odd Monstrosity has to say right here, and then I will present to you guys some of my thoughts for what's going to happen in this episode, and then we shall switch gears and move on over to talking about flashbacks. So Odd Monstrosity says, I have a bad feeling that Kinger will at some point die simply of the fact that he is the longest there, went through so much, and is like, I was here long enough. Maybe in some kind of sacrifice. I could see that happening. I think that there's a good chance that Kinger could unfortunately abstract. Now, the question is, can the people who've abstracted be saved? We don't know. It is possible that that could be the case, and that might be one of the quests that Pomni has to go on later on down the road. But I could see that happening with Kinger, especially because we see Kinger wigging out multiple times. He cried, like there's moments where he goes nutty when it's absolutely inconvenient. There's moments where he's completely lucid and then snaps right back to being crazy again, and he doesn't realize that it's happening. And that might be actually the one thing that's keeping him from abstracting, is that he can't tell that he's insane. and that the moment that he actually comes to that realization, that might be actually what finally breaks him and causes him to abstract. Wife says, one last thing I have to say about abstraction. I'm really curious as if it has a full psychological form. We've seen glimpses of what it looks like through Kaufmo and the colorful eyes it has. And maybe. All right. So let me tell you guys what I think could end up being the case with this upcoming episode. And let me quickly share. Coming. I'm gonna tone this down a little bit so you don't burst out people's eardrums as we go. Jay Nees asks, what does this have to do with flashbacks and battles? Nothing at the moment. We're going to get there. So here's what I'm thinking is going to happen as far as this episode goes. So they're going to get sent on over to the manor as per Kane's newest game of the day, which that's the norm. We've already been told that that's the norm. And of course, Zubal's going to say, I'm not doing this. To which Kane's like, okay, then we need to talk this over, because how can I serve you if I don't know what's wrong with you? Zubal's like, there's nothing wrong with me. I don't want to do this. Oh, there has to be something wrong with you. Everyone loves my games. Boink, pulls out Zubal, and then Zubal gets to then go through the ringer with Kane in a very awful therapy session, which what I suspect is going to be revealed about Zubal. This is what I think. That I could be absolutely off about this. But I think that what Zubal is scared of when it comes to going on these adventures is that Zubal is scared of losing their mind as they go along with this. Because as Ragatha and as Jax have already said in the pilot episode, that the adventures are there as a distraction. And that if they stop at any point in time to think about what's actually going on here, they then begin to realize that none of this actually matters, and it causes them to break. And so for Zubal, I think that Zubal is doing something very different. Rather than going through these adventures to distract themselves, Zubal is trying to remain as much as they are themselves in the circus by not doing anything. But the problem with that is that you effectively atrophy as an individual. And I think that what Kane is going to reveal, whether it is good advice or bad advice, we'll have to see how things play out. But I think that Kane's going to point out saying, like, if you're scared of abstracting, you not doing anything isn't actually going to help. Like, if you want out, if you want to escape what's happened to you, Zubal, I can't let you out of the digital circus, because that's just the way that things are. But maybe you don't have to yourself be stuck in the digital circus. Now then, can Kane actually articulate that kind of a message in any way that will really resound with Zubal? Probably not. But I think that that's the message that's going to be sent to Zubal, and that Zubal will be given another chance in a later adventure to kind of be the one that the group needs to rely on in order to survive one of the stories that Kane gives to them, and that will be a liberating experience for Zubal, who has been avoiding everything thus far, which might seem like a good idea, but probably isn't, to just simply avoid the circus. Because again, if you don't do anything, you just atrophy, and Zubal is slowly going insane like everyone else, just in a different way, and without making any progress. And this is where the rest of the story for episode 3, I think, comes in. Because for the pilot and for episode 2, there's a very straightforward story and challenge given to the players. But as you go deeper into the game and into the challenge, into the story that Kane has presented, there's always a deeper element ready to be discovered. And it's something usually very sinister. So in the pilot, you have the gloinks, and the gloinks are just annoying. And the quest is to gather the gloinks. And by gathering all the gloinks, then they win the day. The problem is that they can never gather all the gloinks because the gloinks are always constantly being created by the gloink queen. So the quest was ultimately going to always lead them to finding out about the gloink queen and confronting this entity that wishes to transform everything into gloinks and change whatever anything once was into something else, which, when you stop to think about it, is exactly what has happened to everyone in the Amazing Digital Circus. They were once human and have been forcibly converted into something else within the program of the Amazing Digital Circus and can't escape. This program which refuses to let go and continues to grab people. There's a ton of people who've abstracted, and more people keep coming into the Digital Circus over time, like Pomni. Something is up. So there's something sinister going on that is pulling people into the circus, just like the Gloink Queen was pulling items and people into herself in order to transform them into gloinks. Now, is it an exact one-for-one what's happening to Pomni and the gang? I don't think so. I don't think that's exactly the case, but I think it's a hint that's being given to them by Cain. And then in Candy Carrier Chaos, it's a very straightforward adventure story. Go face off against the bandits who have stolen the syrup, get the syrup back to the kingdom, and then you will be praised as heroes. It's incredibly straightforward. They were supposed to have a Mad Max fight and chase against the bandits, defeat Gummy Goo and his ne'er-do-wells, and bring the syrup back. Hallelujah, story over. Cain did not think beyond that. And we see that in the map and in the settings and backup for that world. But then there's the fudge. What the heck does the fudge have to do with this? We learn from the princess that fudge was... we've learned from the fudge that they had once tried to eat the people of the Candy Kingdom, and that the princess had kicked them out and had refused to let them back in. And so that the people of the Candy Kingdom are safe unless someone opens the door and lets the fudge in. And then the fudge rakes chaos amongst the Candy Kingdom. So now then, if we think then about, again, what's happening with the characters within the Digital Circus. The Digital Circus is a safe space for anyone who is in it. Cain is designed to prevent people from dying. He even actually invites Pomni to drown herself in the lake, knowing that she won't die. And the moment that Pomni goes outside of the natural bounds of the Digital Circus, Cain is alerted, grabs her, and brings her on back. And should anyone be damaged, thanks to the abstraction of Kaufman's abstraction, Cain snaps his fingers and undoes all the damage. Cain is meant on some level to protect the people within the Digital Circus, but they're stuck within the confines, within the walls, unless something is invited in. So, what is the monster that Cain is trying to keep out? Is it the process of abstracting? Is it the abstractions themselves? Just like how the abstractions have been kicked out of the circus proper and are held underneath in this void? And that's kind of what happened to the fudge? Are we getting hints of something else going on? So this now leads me to consider what we're going to get then within the main story proper for episode 3, within the manor itself. What could be encountered that would give us a hint to the reality and the dangers of the Digital Circus? And that's kind of where I want my little thought process to go along. Roblox says, fudge is fudge, and the sole owner of the line, they taste so good, I can hear their screams with me. Oh my gosh, the fudge is so bad, so awful, but it's so great. So my guess, Ghosts in the Machines? Possibly. I think so. Based on the teaser art and what we see then here in the trailer, once we start going through with it, that this isn't just simply, okay, go to this spooky manor. Like, the characters are going to get called in to to do something. They're all going to the manor to complete some sort of goal. Most likely it's going to be, I think that what it's going to be is that it's going to be a discover the something. So in the first episode, it was gather the gloinks. In episode 2, it was rescue the syrup. I think that what it's going to be is find the MacGuffin. That's my guess. Find this spooky MacGuffin in a spooky manner and avoid the ghosts. And then I'm like, what, the ghosts? And then we're actually going to deal with real ghosts, monster things, hunting Pomni and Kinger, and then discovering whatever the deeper story is. I got to take a drink of water right there. Ashley says, I love this theory. Love that theory. Kane is a story writer. Story writers need inspiration. So what is Kane's inspiration? He's writing what he knows. Fabio, could you read both my Kinger related messages up above? I don't know where you had your Kinger related ones. Fabio says, I do believe in Kinger was a bug tester, specifically one with some privileges, so I could be biased on that. Okay. Or he could have a sacrifice scene. Okay, so so we're having to see. I think it's possible he could have been a bug tester. That would fit in with his knowledge of the digital circus, from what we know. We'll just have to see what happens. What would happen if Solver was in digital circus? If they don't figure it out real fast, everyone would die. That's the answer, Mojo. It's very simple. They would be tortured, and they would be tortured with their own fears, and then eaten. So what I think, again, and this is going off of just the very limited information of what we have here in this teaser. So we got this cute little ghost. I think that the cute little ghost is going to be kind of like the person of like, okay, then, so this is welcome to the manor. This is your job. Find spooky MacGuffin. Oh, and avoid blah, blah, blah. And that the blah, blah, blah that comes after them is probably going to have like some really weird haunted story of most likely spirits that can't leave the manor, spirits that want to possess the bodies of Pomni, Kinger, Jax, and the others, so that way they can escape the program, is probably what's happening right here, because we've had Gummigoo who didn't know that he was a program, and I think that here in episode 3 there's a very good chance that we're going to see what happens when one of the NPCs knows it's an NPC and is trying to get out. I think that that's where the haunting comes in. Fabio, backbone of the theory, looking out for bugs, finds insect collection. Yes, he is very interested in his insect collection. Imagine Jax getting possessed. Yeah, but would anyone know the difference? Unless Jax becomes a whole lot nicer and way more polite when he's possessed. Roblox, what if it's like Scooby-Doo scenario where they just need to find out who the monster is? Possible. I would love that. I would love to have a nice little callback to Scooby-Doo in this episode if we did get that, because I think Gooseworks could pull it off pretty well. Whoop. Let me bring this on back here. So the Milden Hall, the mystery of the Milden Hall Manor. So, well, like, again, how does this actually then fit into my idea of there being a MacGuffin that for them to go on after? Well, usually mysteries resolve around finding that one thing, that one all-important clue that solves it all, that brings everything together. Hence why I think that they're going to go looking for a magical MacGuffin, a spooky MacGuffin. Could I be wrong? Absolutely. But that's what I'm right now running with. And so, of course, here we got Kane. Zubul. Then we've got Pomni freaking out. Pomni probably freaking out because Pomni just, I would guess, just witnessed either Jax, Gangle, or Ragatha getting possessed. Is probably where this freak out moment is coming from. And then Pomni trying to escape, and yet can't escape. This is right here. This is an interesting little thing for those of you who don't know. This is a little elevator chute. You open this on up, and you can put stuff or people, if they're small enough, here into this little elevator, and then send it up to another place, or send it down to another place in the manor. So then, looking for clues, looking for stuff. The Pillow Fort. Oh, most definitely. Kinger is going to try to survive by being in a pillow fort. Monkey reference. And then here we have, there we got Jax with a little vacuum cleaner. Definitely, I feel like a good little callback right here to Luigi's mansion. So definitely thinking ghosts. So again, it's like, what if we got it? Like, what if we got to suck up ghosts? And maybe that's what's going on here. It's like, we got to deal with ghosts. Well, if there's a ghost, I am ready here to suck it on up. What do you think, Pomni? Think I can get some ghosts with this right here? And then just start jabbing Pomni. Oh, it doesn't work on you. So maybe it won't work on ghosts. Pillow fort of defense. The pillow fort cannot be taken. Unless it's up against a bunch of gloinks. So based on the little Wacky Watch mini adventure, I think Jax jump scares Pomni. That could definitely happen, and that would be absolutely in line with Jax. Fabio, gotta love my visual brain giving me some character designs I can find awesome, yet struggle with the design of one of a duo when it gives me an amazing digital circus OC. It's just a small purple it's just some smaller purple bunny. Well, I guess you really got Jax on the brain there. Now that I gotta quickly go back to that. I don't think I actually noticed that before. Is that Kinger missing an eye? Yep, that's Kinger missing an eye. So that's a little bit interesting there. I completely missed that. So there will be some interesting consequences happening here in this episode. While it might not be alien levels of spooky and uncomfortable, there'll definitely be some things that seem to be happening. That or they just completely forgot the eyeball in the animation. But there's a good chance that the eye has been taken. And if so, by whom? By what? For what purpose? And maybe that could also actually be a way of determining. It's like, hey, you know what? Like, I'm not possessed because I'm getting rid of my eyeball. And why would a possessed person want to get rid of their eyeball? Kinger, that doesn't make any sense. Oh, trust me, it makes sense. Roblox, Pomni pulling on the door is a reference to a video where a gorilla is yanking at a door handle trying to escape its exit. Oh, I've seen some of those things. That's just sad. Wafi, it's awesome how Gooseworks was able to create a cast of such unique characters with their own personalities. Amen. I don't know where that went. I don't know where that eye went either. Aye. My man's got his eye. He knows the programming for the ghost via past experience testing, and maybe that's the case. Maybe that's why he's missing his eye, because he has a moment of lucidity and is all like, "Oh, this is what I gotta do," or "I'm not possessed," or maybe I am possessed. My eye is possessed. That's the eye and eye. Pull out the eye, chuck it. You can't do anything when you're just an eye, you silly ghost. Maybe that's what's going on here. But Kinger is going to get Kinger and Pomni are going to get put through the ringer a little bit right here. It's not just Zubul who's going to get the treatments. Kane being Kane. I think that this is meant, either this shot right here is going to be like a set up the spooky because Pomni looks a little bit confused, or this is the revelation moment. I got to go back to Kinger being hypnotized. Whoop. Kinger being hypnotized and dazed. There we go. Oh, this is Kinger when he sees a bug collection. And maybe this is why an eye is going to go missing, because I'm being possessed. If an eye offends me, pluck it out. All right. But in any case, again, coming back to it, I do believe that whatever the characters are going to go through, that ultimately the story within the story is that you do have these spirits that are trying to escape, NPCs that know that they are NPCs and that they intend to possess the players, Pomni and the gang, and then come into the digital circus and try to escape that way. Which, while it's not a 1-to-1 of what's exactly happening with Pomni and the others are all stuck. They know they're in a game of some kind and they're trying to get out. And so it would reflect that crisis, that difficulty that they're going through. And Kinger, being someone who has information, who has knowledge locked away in his own addled brain of what's going on here, is in a perfect situation potentially to call that out and to make connections to what's really happening within the digital circus and maybe the nature of why they can't get out. Because that's one of the biggest things. If you're stuck in a problem and if you don't understand why that problem is happening, you can't fix the how, which is interesting. This is actually something. This was something that was imparted to me by a professor of mine that kind of broke my brain. And I know this is going to make some people be like, that just sounds like your professor is lying to you, Lars. But think about this right here. He once said, "You will make $1 billion if you can explain why it rains, not how it rains." Why it rains. He says, we know the how. We know exactly every step of the way in order to understand how to make it rain. But he then said, but we actually haven't been able to do that ourselves yet. We can't control the weather. We can't accurately predict what's going to happen because we don't understand the why. And until we know the why this stuff happens, weather will always be a mystery to us in some way or another. Like you can understand. So Kinger, for instance, can understand the Amazing Digital Circus. The information is locked there in his head, but maybe figuring out the why they can't escape. Not necessarily the how, because you can fix the how. But first you need to figure out the why. So there's kind of your big philosophical moment right there. And maybe episode 3 could give it to us, at least give us some breadcrumbs as to the why they can't escape. Mojo, Kinger is looking like a cat. Oh, absolutely. Laffy, also people are saying episode 2 was bad because it was a carbon copy of the pilot, but I don't see it. Fabio says spirit, possession, another allegory for abstraction. Fabio says, I think they only saw surface level stuff. Yeah, and I would disagree. For anyone who says it's a carbon copy, it definitely wasn't a carbon copy. There was a very different adventure going on there. Was it completely different from episode 1 where I think that people were expecting a lot of different things to happen going into episode 2. And again, I did not expect that Pomni would have her revelation at the end of episode 2. I thought that she was going to get that closer to the end of the season. And that's great. And I think that's one of the things is that for a lot of people, they might not be able to articulate what they actually saw. And this is something, and this is, sorry, let me quickly take a drink of water. And then I'm going to talk as a teacher for a moment. Good water. Okay, then. So, this is something that I've seen a lot as a writer, but especially as a teacher, is that people can see something and they can begin to understand it, whether that be a social problem, a story, a political event, a war, a sequence of events to why their girlfriend dumped them. It can be anything. People can see it and they know it happened, but for some odd reason, they can't articulate what it was that they just witnessed or experienced or what they're learning or what they're watching. They can see it and they can explain it in the most basic of forms. But the greater depth of description, of understanding, is elusive to them. They can't quite grasp it. They can't quite put it into their own words. And as a teacher, I was constantly trying to teach my students to try to put historical events into their own words. I'm like, here's what happened. Let's try to understand it. And now that you understand it, put it into your own words. Do not regurgitate what I say or what Wikipedia says. Put it in your own words. And the students of mine who could put history into their own words were students who could communicate, who could express complex ideas, who could be given an episode of a show and begin breaking it down about what works and what doesn't work. Their classmates could watch, for instance, an episode of Murder Drones and explain to me, or an episode of The Amazing Digital Circus, and know that something worked and that something didn't, but they would never be able to put it into their own words. And so for everyone, this is one of the reasons why writing and why reading are so important, is because reading allows you to see the world from a completely different perspective in depth, and not just simply see it like watching a show like The Amazing Digital Circus, but see it in words. And you get to see all these other words, and you get to learn what those words mean. And you can then take those words and use them your own way to express yourself. There's a lot of people who might have been upset with what they saw in episode 2 of Murder Drones, or I keep saying Murder Drones, sorry, of The Amazing Digital Circus. And were disappointed in some of the stuff that they saw. But because so many people these days are not used to actually communicating with each other or really analyzing or understanding what they're seeing, because unfortunately more and more people are not reading like they should. They're just skimming or just taking a brief blurb of what someone else has said and then moving on with their day. The ability to understand, to take in information and then to express it in their own words is becoming slowly but surely a lost art, a very necessary element of communication. And so I think that for people who were upset with episode 2 of The Amazing Digital Circus for story reasons, I think that the only way that they could fully express themselves, because they weren't able to like really say what's going on, is that it just felt too much like episode 1, and that we weren't moving on anywhere new or interesting. To which, again, I completely disagree, but I think that that is what these people were thinking of, and that what really are the core problems for them are things that they just are unable to fully explain and articulate. That would be my guess to the situation. And the way to overcome that is read more, write more. The more that you read and the more that you write, the more you're actually able to express yourself and the complexity of your own thought, and then see what works and what doesn't. Because sometimes you think you have a really great idea, and then when you start writing out, you're like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking there? Nope, scratch that. And if more people went through that process, I think we would have way better interactions with one another. That's just my personal opinion right there. I says, I'm like 90% sure that we're going to get our first major lore drop this episode. I think so too, especially since, again, we're having Kinger on as the buddy cop for Pomni's adventure. Saw Big Blob with physics. It's all the same. It's just the glowing queen. Wafi. Also, what's the better episode 2, aka easier to understand? Murder Drones 2 episode Heartbeat, or The Amazing Digital Circus episode 2 Candy Carrier Chaos? Wafi, my answer is that Candy Carrier Chaos is way more understandable up front than Heartbeat. Heartbeat, however, at least now that we can look back in retrospect, and this could end up being the case for Candy Carrier Chaos as well, Heartbeat had way more information packed into it, and we didn't know it at the time. It was a very deep, complex episode. But at face value, if you were to just watch Heartbeat on its own, it doesn't make any sense. It's an episode that absolutely relies on the pilot and everything that comes after it to tell a good, cohesive story. But it is an amazingly dense installment in Murder Drones. So much information. With Candy Carrier Chaos, it gives you the story flat out, takes you on Pomni's personal adventure to finally confronting her own existential crisis and realizing that she's not alone in this, which was huge. That's so important for her. And it'll be interesting to see where she goes from there in episode 3. So at face value, Candy Carrier Chaos gives us something that's more comprehensible. And so as a result, it's very easy to say that it's the better episode. However, again, that's not to take away from everything that is in Heartbeat, because Heartbeat gives us a ton. But if you remove it and put it in isolation on its own, it's not as strong of a standalone installment as opposed to like the pilot or the promening or the outing to the Cabin Fever Labs, the episode Home. Those episodes are way stronger standalones once you just take them and you put them off on a pedestal or in a vacuum on their own. So I hope that answers your question right there. And Hannah says, sorry, I got to go. There's something wrong with the stream. I'll watch your video lesson later. I'm sorry, Hannah. Sorry to see you go. I hope that everything works out. Let's see here. Is there... Well, let's say the audio is coming through very well on my end. So hopefully... I'm sorry if it's just a problem on your end, Hannah. I hope everything gets straightened out. Okay, so let me continue then here with this. The shotgun. So again, whoop, how did we go back there? I wanted the shotgun action. So Kinger slamming down with the shotgun. Any other frames you missed? Oh, probably, Waff. You'd have to break this down frame by frame by frame. Again, I think that why Kinger is slamming with the shotgun rather than firing it is because of YouTube regulations. YouTube almost immediately demonetizes your videos or makes your videos very hard to find or be recommended to you if you have a gun firing in them. The exceptions are made, of course, for Hollywood. Hollywood can get away with that, and news organizations. But every other creator is immediately penalized for having a gun go off in any of their videos. It's really annoying. Therapy with Kane. Avi, oh, look at this real quick. If you look close, his hitting Pomni look below her, it's her leg. Wait, really? Now let's go back to this. No, I don't see. Right, well, there's Kinger guarding Pomni in the bowels. So you see the archway right here. Unless this is a keyhole that we're looking through right here, this is probably in the basement of the manor. It's where where this is going down. Jax, and then I love the cartoon eye moments. Zubul, you are not allowed to escape me whatsoever. We are going to have a therapy session, you and I. And then here we have, ooh. Okay. I actually, again, things I'd not really thought about until just now in this moment. How many of you have read the short story by Edgar Allan Poe, The Cask of Amontillado? I'm probably butchering the name of that wine. But the cask of Amontillado, I am getting instant Edgar Allan Poe vibes with this frame right here. As we got a man who has clearly mummified down here in the basement, along with all of that delicious alcohol. Blech. Waffy, oh, look at this real quick. It's hard to see. I love the colors of that Jax frame for some reason. Looks really colorful. Dead bodies. Oh, damn. Yes, so we got a dead human down here in the cellar. I'm really interested in what the commentary is going to be for that, because, I mean, they're all human, just put into new avatar bodies. So actually seeing another human again is going to be like, oh my gosh. Mike says, I've heard that one, don't remember that one fully. So for those of you who don't know the short story, The Cask of Amontillado, it is a story about a murder where the main character who's telling you the story is going to murder a man because the man insulted him in public. So he finds him during Carnival, or people here in the States would consider more Mardi Gras in New Orleans, Carnival. But if you go on over to Europe, it's Carnival. And it's the week of reckless abandon. And so during this week of reckless abandon, the guy finds his old friend / enemy. He's drunk, and he gets him even more drunk, and he says, I've got this cask of Amontillado. I want you to go check it out. Please come with me. And so they go into the catacombs where he has a hole laid out for the guy. And the guy goes to check on this cask of Amontillado, and then the guy manacles and chains him to this wall with his alcohol, and then proceeds to wall him up and seals the guy in the walls of the catacombs and kills him in there. It's really messed up. Very Edgar Allan Poe. I'm like, I've heard of that tale in middle school. it's a good story to read. I highly recommend reading The Cask of Amontillado. It's one that will give you a small chill when you get to the end of it, because you're like, oh my gosh, oh that's horrible. Much kind of like reading The Mask of the Red Death. The Mask of the Red Death is a phenomenal short story. Holy cow! Very good Halloween, right? Very good Halloween reading. Wife says it's kind of funny seeing Pomni's cartoonish appearance next to a decaying, rotting, realistic corpse. It's just funny. LOL. Fabio, that body's kind of more like TF2. TF2. TF2 is not registering right now in my mind. You have to explain TF2 or the mummies in that Super Smash Bros. Ultimate trailer with Luigi in Castlevania. Okay. Team Fortress 2. Oh, okay. I've not played Team Fortress, so fortunately that reference was lost on me. So I guess that kind of does help to confirm that we are going to be in the basement. Bodies. That also kind of explains what that one figure was off to the side when Kinger's like, get behind me, Pomni. And then we've got this horrifying thing. This is a head on a plaque. And this could probably be one of the ghost things that's going to come on out and try to possess people. Look at how translucent its neck is. That's super creepy right there. So again, very likely we're going to be dealing with ghosts that understand who and what they are and are trying to possess the party as they're just on a simple solve the mystery, get the spooky MacGuffin mission. Again, as most of Kane's games go, super straightforward, but it's what's underneath that is highly complex and is very likely indicative of what they're really going through as they are stuck in the digital circus. Pomni freaking out. Let's go back to Pomni freaking out. Pomni freaking out. Here we got Kinger at a desk. It looks to me like he's got a quill and inkwell. How very dignified for royalty. Imagine that thing chasing you. Ew. Yes. Oh. Ugh. You know, as much as I like spooky stories and I like watching ghost videos and whatnot, I honestly would, if I were to be put into like a creepy mansion like this, I'd be all like, okay, then I need as much rock salt as shotguns, blessed salt, blessed water, and everything you could possibly give me to take on anything, because no ghost is coming into this body. I've thought of this. I've thought of if this episode's going to be another physics-based appearance monster like cloth physics, huge sheet ghost. Maybe. Wafi, I think she's getting possessed in that frame. Look at the green lighting around her. It looks unnatural. Let's come back to it. And there we go. Yep. And with the way that her eyes are rolled back, Kinger is right behind her. So yeah, so this could be her getting possessed. And Kinger is going to be like, maybe this is where Kinger smashes her with a shotgun. Get out of Pomni's body. Yeah. Removal of ghosts via shotgun. It's highly effective. Ooh. Let's go back to appreciate. So here we have Zubul freaking out. But let's go back to appreciate Kinger. Ah, dang it. I missed it. No, quick. And there. Ah, dang it. It's so... I should have taken the time to put this into VSDC and just break it down frame for frame for frame. Just didn't have the time. Kinger's going to beat the evil out of her. He's going to save the day. Let's see if I can... Okay. Ah, dang it. It's such a blink and you miss it moment of Kinger like looking really haunted. Dang it. Ah, dang it. I'll maybe sometime. Well, when the episode premieres on Friday, we'll have a chance to get a better shot of Kinger looking just absolutely distraught. Dang, yeah, it's such a, you gotta have like little lightning fingers, at least here on StreamYard, to get that just right. The TV account saw it, yeah. Say Kinger just looks like haunted, horrified by whatever he's just saw. And that's going to be interesting. I think we're definitely going to have a Kinger revelation moment. Struggling to find Kinger scared. Yes. Yellow-eyed Zubel. Let's just go back to, again, appreciate it, and then we'll be done with this. Eyes. All right. So there we have it. This is going to be a fun episode. There'll be a lot to talk about. And one last thing to say about the whole Netflix deal and whatnot is that this is going to be fascinating, because since we're going to get 3 episodes of The Amazing Digital Circus premiering on Netflix on October 4th, for the people who want to go and binge it all together. And I told one of my sisters about this, and she's like, hey, I might just do that. And if that happens, if there's a lot of people who've not come across The Amazing Digital Circus before and binge it, even if Netflix only gets, like, let's say 1/10 of the views of what it's going to get on YouTube, that would be huge. That basically means that it has a chance of charting against much bigger shows. And here's also something else to think about right here. Amazon with its big Rings of Power. Oh, it's so popular. It's so great, which it isn't. If Rings of Power is officially beaten by The Amazing Digital Circus, which it already is on YouTube. YouTube has already proven that everything from Bridgerton to the Rings of Power to anything that Disney's doing has been destroyed by the Digital Circus. If it then becomes official in Hollywood's ledger, this will cause avalanches. Disney, for instance, I believe will start becoming very vindictive against indie creators. I can see it happening because they are furious that Universal has dared to challenge them for the crown of animation. And if a rinky-dink indie animated short is going to beat them in the polls, in the viewership, and number of minutes watched and streamed, oh, they are going to be furious, and it's going to be amazing. Will that happen? I don't know, but I think there's a chance that it could. And if it does, you'll watch. You guys will be able to watch it in real time as the entertainment industry begins to reel from the reality that indie animation is no longer just niche. It's become a viable business. It is here to stay, and it's here to do amazing things that people love. And that's what I'm hoping for this next weekend. I think there's a good chance for us to see something big and amazing happen. So that's why I'm really looking forward to this. Only a week away or so. Absolutely. All right, so my biggest question is, who is that Murder Drone's human-looking ghost? Bright Blue Tessa? And you'd say, what? Well, let's go back through this here. So you're going to have to point out exactly, because I don't see a bluish Tessa really anywhere in this ISO. So I mean, we got that cute little ghost who will definitely be a non-edible plushie. All right, so you mean Martha Mildenhall? Oh yeah, we're definitely going to get Martha Mildenhall at some point. Will she be the one who's possessing people? Potentially. We'll find out. All right, so that's enough of the Amazing Digital Circus talked about. That went on for nearly an hour and a half. Woo boy. TV account. I have something for my mom to catch me up when the lesson's up. All right. Fabio, not my brain reminding me at random that I'm excited for Sonic Movie 3. Oh, that's gonna be fun. Sonic 3. I've warred with myself if I want to do a video about the presentation for Sonic 3 and ultimately like the lessons that people should be taking away from the fact that we are getting a third Sonic movie and that looks dang good. But I just don't know if people have really wanted me to do that. So I've forbeared. But let us finally get to our writing lesson. All Okay, let me get a drink of water here. Good water. Okay, then. So, flashbacks. The ins, outs, do's, don'ts, and please don't tries of flashbacks. That is what we are going to be talking about tonight. Or today, or this morning, wherever you're at. Fabio, my mom laughed at seeing CNA because of the coincidence of the Brazilian toy company. Yeah, I watched The Amazing Digital Circus with my mom. It's her jam. Hey, that's fantastic. That's awesome, Fabio. Glad that you guys have that together. Roblox, not Sonic 3 pulling Jim Carrey out of retirement for the 4th time. Yes. I love that Jim Carrey came out of retirement to do 2 roles for this movie. That is awesome. Jim Carrey's the man. All right. So let's talk about the use of flashbacks. So flashbacks. They are a method of conveying important character and plot relevant information from the past with precise detail. It's not characters simply talking about past events. It is you being able to experience the past in some way in precise detail, usually from a specific perspective, a POV, and this happens in the present, pausing the main story in order to convey all of that information. That is a flashback. Now then, here's the problem with flashbacks, and this is why people will always be worrying about them, no matter if they're done well or not. Flashbacks are a mess because they mess around with the flow of the story. Most readers are invested in the now. I care about what's happening right now in the story, not what happened way back when. Breaking off from what is happening in the now to jump into the past, even if it is essential or relevant or very well done, usually feels to most people like an unnecessary deviation from the plot. You could have just done that in the prequel story, my dude, or you could have had that like happen somewhere else, or just simply explain it right now. Because since people like it right now, they like what's happening in the story right now. If there's anything from the past that is relevant to the story, it should just be something that's conveyed very, very quickly with the characters gabbing about it and then moving on. Keep it quick, digestible, and on track. That is why most people don't like flashbacks, because it messes with the pacing and because they want to care about and be involved with what is happening right now. So my favorite forms of flashbacks has to be the Force echoes from Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. They fit in so seamlessly, and it is an established Force mechanic. And you usually get a new neat skill after a Force Echo flashback, which is great. So you want to find those flashbacks. TV account, you just missed more gabbing and talking about and speculating about the Amazing Digital Circus. We are now finally getting to the real meat of the matter, the writing lesson. Yeah, people catching details like, oh, he remembered this wrong because detail, like everyone laughed at him, but not in reality. Yes, you have that. So we're going to have a look at some examples. Bleach, Naruto, Tenet, Demon Slayer, Berserk. I will admit I misspelled Tenet. There should only be one N. Oh, well. So we're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the inventive, and the legendary. Oh, Lars just turned into Sin for a second. Ew. Oh, no. Don't tell me we're going to be dealing with audio issues again. Let's just see how this is going on. I'm hearing everything's just fine here on my end. That's so annoying. Okay. Well, point that back. Okay. I knew Naruto would be on the list. Now then, let me talk about Bleach and Naruto before I actually start showing you guys some footage. So the reason why I put Bleach up as a good example of a flashback is because in Bleach, there's actually plenty of flashbacks. You get flashbacks, for instance, for like what happened to Rukia when Rukia was young. You have flashbacks to what happened when Renji was young. You have flashbacks to when Ichigo goes off to do some epic training, but you actually don't get all of it. He then shows up and everyone's like, Ichigo, how come you have a new power? Well, I trained. And then boom, you get flashback to a training moment. The reason why the flashbacks in Bleach usually work out really well, at least the canon flashbacks, is because not only is it very relevant to the moment, but that the characters are actually like explaining why the memory is even happening there. So the memory is brief, you get the information that you need, and then then Ichigo's all like, and that's why I have this awesome sword. Now shut up and stand back as I go kick this man's butt. And then Ichigo proceeds to do Ichigo things and totally wrecks whoever his opponent is. And so Bleach does the flashbacks pretty well because they are succinct, to the point, and the characters are basically talking about that memory. So the flashback is for the benefit of the viewer, because effectively the characters are just explaining to themselves very briefly what actually just happened or what they experienced. And so the flashbacks work out really well in Bleach because they're not all the flippin' time and they're really short most of the time. Naruto is a bad example, not just simply because, oh, you need to understand this moment from the past and it's going to be super long, let me tell you, but also because the flashbacks happen so often in places that just completely derail the flow of the story. And so, because again, people are interested in what's happening right now. I care about what's happening to Naruto right now. Why are you pausing the story to go for a 15-minute tangent into the past when 3 minutes would have sufficed? There is an answer to that. Why that was the case in production. It isn't just simply because that's how it was written, but also because the Naruto series was constantly butting up against the actual manga count. And this is back in the days when the big manga, when they were being adapted to anime, was constantly a new episode every week. That was the plan. So if there was no manga material, we have to do filler episodes, and filler can like really detract from the story. So what if we spent even more time with the canon flashbacks? Yay! Oh, so it was practical from a production standpoint, so that way they weren't constantly butting up against the end of the manga as it currently stood at that time, but it caused all sorts of issues for the pacing of the story. Small audio issue, because I'm listening to the audio as I'm speaking, but I didn't hear it. That's interesting. So sorry about that, Fabio. Wafia, I'm actually a beginning writer. When I write fights, I make them specifically fit the setting. Excellent. Fights should fit the setting. I want them to fit. For example, if it's cyberpunk, it will be with futuristic weapons. If it's older times, I'll make the characters use old-time weapons to fight. Good, yeah. 2 medieval knights should not be fighting each other with shotguns. Unless, for some reason, you've written it into your story that shotguns can be there. Then that works. So it was funny because there was an entire freaking subplot in the form of flashbacks just so that way we could understand the present plot. Yes, Naruto just relied too much on flashbacks. And this is actually where I'm going to jump to Berserk, because Berserk did the flashback right. Berserk dedicates an entire arc to a flashback. And so to understand, because you're introduced finally to Guts, you've been introduced now to Griffith, but you don't really understand yet that that's Griffith. You've met Casca, but you're not exactly sure who Casca is, rather than just a potato that's being dragged around. Like you know who the Black Swordsman is. You know about the Apostles. You know about all these monsters that have to be fought and have to be killed and everything, but you don't know the reasons about why. You don't really know who Guts is. You get hints that he's a good man deep down in, but you really only met and known the monster. And the Golden Age arc is there to fill in the audience to who these characters really are, to understand why Guts does what he does. And it is, we'll skip away from that. It is shocking, this arc that, excuse me, that fills you in finally on all of this. One massive flashback arc. It is great. And that's kind of the way that a large flashback probably should be handled, unless you want to have it off as its own unique kind of prequel story, which is totally fine to do. If you're going to use a massive flashback, you might as well make it a total arc within the story. Now, we will talk about the difference between visual flashbacks to written flashbacks here in a bit, because visual media, from comics to anime to cartoons to movies to television shows, have an advantage that writing doesn't, and that is that they can more seamlessly transition on over to flashbacks without it feeling completely jarring. They just have to be creative and cognizant of what exactly they're doing in order to make it fit and flow. So, so my brother came downstairs while my family was watching a flashback subplot and was like, "This isn't where I left off at all." He came back and said, "Still fighting this weirdo?" Yep. Oh, those dumb flashbacks. Taken up all the time. But Berserk, in my opinion, does it absolutely epically. The Golden Age arc is the arc that people remember so well, because after being acquainted with the Black Swordsman and the grimdark fantasy of Berserk, you're suddenly taken back to a better, simpler time where you get to know these characters and they're just so amazing, and you know it's going to turn bad. And so you're waiting with bated breath through all of these amazing adventures in the past that build up how Guts and Griffith were basically best friends, or at least from Guts' perspective. Griffith just saw Guts as someone that he owned. How Guts fell in love with Casca and how Casca fell in love with him. The relationship with the Band of the Hawk. Griffith's dream to become the ruler of a great kingdom. And all of this. How Guts became to be a legend is all there. And then you see how it all falls apart with Griffith's just deplorable, selfish, evil betrayal of everyone. And you could never get that in just brief clips here and there. It would be almost way too disjointed within the animated story of Berserk. So it was better to put it all into one amazing concentrated arc. And that's one of the things that makes it so legendary. Now, the wife says, if you want to write a flashback, just make it feel like it needs to be in the story, not just an excuse to save runtime. Yes, that's very good. It's very important to whatever you're trying to make, so don't waste it. Exactly. All flashbacks must be relevant to what is happening within the story. Otherwise, it should not be in there. TV Account says, I think episode 5 Murder Drones. I think of episode 5 Murder Drones tried to be a flashback while not interfering with the plot, but I think for some it backfired. People couldn't tell what really happened or if it did happen. TV Account, you bring up an excellent example with Murder Drones right there. I love episode 5 dearly. A lot of you guys know this. It's a contender for one of my favorite episodes. And I love the flashback bit. And yes, we don't know what actually happened. Episode 8 basically confirms that what we saw happen in episode 5 is not the way that things played out. And that's because they were messing around with N and V's memories. That's what led to all of that. So you had to be really paying attention to what's happening. And I think that's one of the things that made it difficult for people. Like, wait, is this a flashback or is this just messing around with us? It was very much you had to be paying attention to. It never spelt it out to you what's going on. Now, it was an important flashback to understanding who, again, these characters were, further establishing the relationship between N and V, the relationship between them and J, and with Tessa, and Sin, who was the vessel for Absolute Solver, setting up a lot of the smaller details that would become essential for understanding what would happen in the next 3 episodes, as well as cluing in the very perceptive people, I was not one of them, to the fact that that wasn't actually Tessa, but very likely Sin that was in the suit. So, It did what it was supposed to do, but yes, as far as a bona fide flashback, there was some jankiness. It wasn't perfect, and again, if you weren't paying very close attention to what was happening, it was very easy to miss some of the essential world building elements to explain what was happening with that flashback. Fabio, this actually reminded me of how one of my plans is an animated series being a prequel to another with inevitable bad endings. So this could help out. This could help with that. Yes. Read Berserk if you wish to see what happens, to see how someone can really pull off here's the prequel. It will end horribly. I have a flashback in my mythology story that explains the relationship between the mentor character Orion and the antagonist, the god of death. It was teased but never explained until then. Fabio, there's consistencies between previous version and next versions of the world, and the foreshadowing of what's already known is also another stuff. TV account. I tried to HC that this is just a memory mind scrape hive mind thing. Okay. Roblox. In my opinion, the only thing ended was the real Tessa, just so we would be shocked in episode 7. Maybe. Get to know this Aussie girl. Be shocked at her death. All right, taking a drink of water right there. TV account. I also think this is why we get straight up flashbacks instead of more vague stuff. Maybe. Now then, let me give you guys also now a comparison. So, Demon Slayer versus Tenet. The ugly versus the inventive. Now, the reason why I say that Tenet belongs within the ugly is that if you're to actually watch the movie Tenet, which I recommend that people watch it, I enjoyed it. But I also recognize that it is a mess. And one of the reasons why it's a mess is because it's a movie which is playing around with the concept of time. And you realize that, in effect, the entire movie is a flashback. And that is very frustrating when you get to the end of it. You're like, wait a second. So everything we went through is a flashback to explain how we got here to the beginning. And now the real adventure begins. Holy cow. And it was an incredibly inventive story. Like, I have to give Christopher Nolan props for coming up with a crazy, bold idea and for pushing it forward. And I like that. And there's a lot of small moments within Tenet that are really, really cool. The problem is that when you're basically doing a story that you realize at the end is all just one massive flashback, is like, well, maybe we could have just lived that moment then, and that you then just have this fear that something really weird and supernatural is going to happen, have elements of that throughout, and then have the reveal be, all of this has been time travel all along. Gasp! Then it would have worked better. Unfortunately, that's not what we got. Wafi says, quick hot take flashbacks where you as the viewer need to piece together what happened to a character. I'm sorry, that's just bad, and you shouldn't have to do much of anything. The story should show. Now then, Wafi, that's it. So I understand the hot take right there, because it is incumbent upon the story to do the most of the heavy lifting for you as the viewer, or as the reader if you're reading it. However, a story that is going to spoon feed you literally everything ends up being a story that is not fulfilling in the end, because we like exploring questions. We like thinking about things a little bit deeper. And when a story literally explains everything to you, then a lot of the mystery, a lot of the fun begins to vanish along the way. This is something that this is one of the reasons why I have a big beef with Brandon Sanderson doing his Words of Sanderson, because he explains too much. Everything that you need to know about how the magic and the worlds that he creates are all there in the books. Read the books and you get everything you need. Him explaining even more about various characters, their motivations, their pasts, and other little small mechanics that were never relevant to the story removes way too much speculation and fun, at least on my part. I loved theorizing about the Cosmere, and I still really enjoy the Cosmere. But now, like, I say, oh, I've got this theory. And then immediately I get squashed by a few dozen people saying, he already answered that in words of Sanderson 4 years ago when he was at this convention. And then at this convention 2 years ago, he explained this. And then 6 weeks ago, he was at another convention. He explained this. Therefore, your theory sucks. Booyah. And I mean, that's on them for being jerks. But the problem is that Sanderson gave away all this information that would have been fun to explore. And if he wants to tell me more about that information, then give me more stories. The guy is such a prolific writer. It's very easy for him to create more stories to help explain that stuff. So a story should do the heavy lifting, but it should always leave enough for you to speculate on and have some fun with. To leave just a few things for the audience to enjoy. Now then, with episode 5 of Murder Drones, yes, it should have been better stated about what was actually happening there, that these were memories, but that these were malleable memories, and that ultimately they were trying to prevent these memories from being deleted by Absolute Solver. That meant forcing NNV to live through these memories. But now that Uzi and this other entity are bonking around their brains, that's now screwing with their memories. Very easily explained in like 20 seconds. Boom, that's all done, and you could continue on with the rest of the episode as planned. And so that's definitely one instance where the story can do a little bit of the heavy lifting, but still leave enough open to you. For instance, Gravity Falls. There's so many mysteries to Gravity Falls. And Alex Hirsch is like, yeah, I'm not going to explain it all. That's for you guys to have fun with. I've given you everything that you need to know to enjoy the story and to get the story. Just be watching all the episodes and everything is going to flow just fine. And that's the way that a story, in my opinion, should go. Let's see here. Rolex, I meant the only thing added. Oh, autocorrect. Yes. Megamind, you're probably wondering how I got here. Well, let me tell you. Oh, yes, you're right. So basically the entire movie of Megamind is one massive flashback. And you know what? I am absolutely okay with that. Because Megamind is self-aware on a certain level, and it's great. I'm going to make it spoilers. Episodes 33 and 34 of No Evil are flashbacks to Amarok, which explains his motives for the entire series and why he was gone for 11 years. Ooh, interesting. But then there's also Solver and his motivations to want to destroy Copper 9. Specifically, people didn't like that Liam didn't reveal that, but I agree that theorizing is part of the fun. And again, it is a Lovecraftian horror. You are not supposed to know the motivations of the monster. You just know that the monster does it. If you know the monster, according to Lovecraftian parameters, it should either break your mind or make you go evil. And because this is a Lovecraftian story, and Liam Vickers was generous enough to not melt our brains, he can't describe what Absolute Solver is or why he wants to destroy Copper 9. He just can't. That goes against the rules of a Lovecraftian horror. So there's the answer. I know people don't like that, but that's the answer. Honestly, episode 5 should have went all out and showed the Gala massacre. I know Glitch could do it. They aren't scared of gore, so I know it's not impossible. Yes, and I think also part of it, though, is that they were worried about what YouTube might do to them in terms of the visibility of their video. Fabio, Megamind executed that greatly. Oh, absolutely. If you can understand the monster, then it's not a monster. It's an entity. Yes. Wafi, yeah, that's the thing. I don't understand with people now. Everyone wants to know villains' motives. And no, not all villains need motives. Exactly. And if, for instance, if we were to go on to, like, for instance, if we were to go watch The Thing, and you want an explanation for why the Thing exists and why it's attacking and killing all these people, that would remove the horror. Then it just becomes a really weird body horror, and you're like, oh, that's kind of boring. But when you don't know what the thing is, if you don't know the origins of the xenomorph, they become way more terrifying. And that's just a rule of horror. People these days are so used to getting answers instantly that we expect answers to be given to us in our stories. But that's not the way that things are meant to go. And that takes away from a good story. All right. Now then, let's go then to the inventive means of flashbacks. Now then, as I bring up Demon Slayer, yes, Demon Slayer does have quite a few flashbacks as the story continues. The reason why I use Demon Slayer as an example of an inventive use of a flashback is because when we finally get a real flashback and not just a brief glimpse into, oh, that was our happy life back at home before everything went to hell in a handbasket. When you get finally like a real flashback is when Tanjiro is fighting up against Upper Moon 7 or is it Upper Moon 12? No, it's Upper Moon 12. When he fights up against Upper Moon 12 and he's about to die, he has a flashback moment. And the thing is that the flashback works because it's straight and to the point. It also helps that there's beautiful music overlaid into it. But here's the thing. We don't get these kinds of powerful flashbacks about what you need to know, both as the character and as the audience, until Zenitsu is about to die. And then the demon is poking him. Is like, what are you having? Like your life flashing before your eyes? You know, the reason that happens is because Ray's desperately trying to way out of the situation, and so you have flashbacks because your brain is trying to figure a way out. But there is no way out for you. And then Zenitsu goes full monster and escapes epically, like he does. And so that sets up Tanjiro to have his flashback moments where he, as he's about to die, has his life flash before his eyes, and what he sees was not something that he was expecting. He sees his father. He sees the dance. And that there is a connection in terms of breath, that there is a breathing technique that once you've mastered it will allow you to keep going even when your bones feel like they're falling apart. And that becomes the answer that Tanjiro needs to tap deeper into that breath. And then he's able to seize upon that power and activate a kind of the sun breathing technique, merging it with the water breathing, which allows him then to push back and then finally have that winning blow, obviously due to help from Nezuko, which again, it just makes the scene so great. But the important flashback is relevant to the moment. It's short. It doesn't overstay its welcome, unlike many Naruto flashbacks. And it is set up in another scene by having the explanation that flashbacks are your brain trying to figure out how to get out of a horrible situation. And I really like that. It was a great way of explaining that you're going to have a flashback, and these flashbacks are going to be important. And I like that. That was neat. Rather than just simply using the trope of a flashback, explaining within the story an important phenomena that was about to happen to the main character. That was inventive, that was honest, and it was good. So let's see here. Isa says, for example, the World Eater antagonist for my story is trying to eat the world. Why would you wonder why the World Eater is trying to eat the world? Fabio, at least whatever, give it to us. Try to make it catch up. Makes it catch up. Well, I guess so. I'm not exactly sure what you're trying to say right there, Fabio. All right, so popping back on over. So right there, everything that I've given to you in terms of examples right there have been visual. Now then, that helps us to a certain degree as writers, but unless you yourself are working on a visual story, either told through comics, through a show, through a movie. These kinds of examples help us to understand what works and what doesn't. But when it comes to writing, the technique becomes different. So let me give you then the examples right here. So popping on over here. So suggestions for how you can use flashbacks well within written prose, because written word is a bunch of words. It does not have the benefit of being able to show literally what is going on, how these flashbacks tie into the greater story. You as the author, when you're writing in prose, have to figure out a way of blending it well within the story, so that way it doesn't feel unnatural when you have these flashbacks. So these suggestions I'm going to give to you are ways that you can use flashbacks in written prose that will hopefully make the flashback feel more natural. Hey, Hannah's back. Great to have you back. All right. So my first suggestion is this: dedicated flashback chapters. I love this technique used by Sanderson in his Stormlight Archive series, where the main POV character for each book will get their own dedicated flashbacks. And so you will know then, based on when you turn the page and you get onto a flashback chapter, it lets you know this is a flashback chapter. And now you go back in time and you get to see the important stuff that happened to these characters in the past. And you get a full dedicated chapter before jumping back into the present. And then eventually you then get another flashback chapter. And so effectively, you're actually getting a full story within a story that gives you all the explanations you need as to why a character is in the situation that they were at the beginning of the story. And it clues you in into what kind of problem they ultimately have to overcome by the end. So like Kaladin having to deal, his flashback stories are all about how he became a slave and how he has to find honor once again. Or with Shallan, all of her flashback stories are to how she became a spy for her family and the murders she committed. Or for Dalinar, how he went from the most reprehensible scumbag on the planet to becoming the most honorable man in Roshar. And yet, the dangerous secret that he has been holding, the thing that, should it ever come to light again, would break him. Those are the flashback chapters, and it's told as its own story, as a part of what's going on, but contained within dedicated chapters. That is a really good way of doing flashbacks, in my opinion. I think it reads really well, especially if you have multiple points of view. You are already then used to jumping around, and so it doesn't feel unnatural to then jump into the past for a specific character. But again, you need to make sure that you're dedicating enough time to the now that people don't feel like we're just getting lost in the past. That's important. Wafi, flashbacks should be in a story when we get a decent or long amount of time with the protagonist of the story. That depends, Wafi. Again, actually, I would recommend checking out the Stormlight Archive, because we get the flashbacks really fast for our main characters. But at least in the first book, by the time that you get to Dalinar's flashbacks, you already know who Dalinar is pretty well. So you've had plenty of time with him. But so long as those flashbacks are providing necessary information in order to help you understand the main characters, then it works. Again, this is up to you to decide how to best use a flashback, but especially like when you have dedicated chapters to them. All right, so the flashback in my story is supposed to explain why Orion the Hunter and the God of Death hate each other and expand on Orion's character. It's supposed to make the story more emotional. Excellent. I like it. Now then, there are other flashbacks that you can do. These are the brief moments. So a character in real time has a flashback to something important, but there's no dedicated chapter, no dedicated break or anything like that. These moments should be like 1 to 3 sentences at most. so that way it doesn't feel unnatural and break up the pacing. This can be like a character like walking on home, doodly doo doo. It's like, I'm so excited to be home. My wife is making me dinner, and then suddenly remembers, and make sure that before you come home that you buy lasagna, because I'm not actually going to have time to bake today. And the guy's like, oh no, I didn't get the lasagna. Like, just having like that little sentence right there, just put on in as a little flashback, lets you know the character forgot something. It's made a little bit humorous, and it juxtaposes their feelings just before, and thus the fun begins. Like, oh crud, I forgot to get the lasagna. And so these brief moment flashbacks are usually used as a way to remind characters of something that they needed to know within the moment. And that way you're not dedicating a whole bunch of time, and it makes it a little bit more fun, a little bit more personal, or it can bring out just a little bit of character from other characters in a moment without it just simply being, oh, dang it, I forgot the lasagna. Time to go to the store. The tension is lost by just simply saying, and then he remembered that he forgot the lasagna. Having the flashback to, make sure you buy the lasagna because I won't have time to bake today. Oh no, oh, I made a mistake. that just ends up working better. Garfield's worst nightmare. Forgot the lasagna. Exactly. And then here are my other two suggestions for writing flashbacks. Chapter openers and headings. We talked about using chapter headings and openers earlier as ways of being able to give more information about the world or about a character. This can be really good when you have chapter headings or openers that give you just brief glimpses into the past. That way, then you can learn from the character, like, oh, so this is what happened. Oh, this was this event. Oh, this was this relationship. This was this conversation. It's brief, it's to the point, and it should usually be used to clue you into what you're about to get into in that chapter. And if you make it too broken off, then it feels a bit like, why is this here? Why am I getting this flashback in a chapter heading or opening? Feel like I could have learned something else better here. There's a risk of using chapter headings and openings. So something to bear in mind, but it is a way of communicating brief glimpses into flashbacks without overburdening the reader with a massive flashback. So something to think about right there. And take another drink of water. Ah, man. After going for nearly 2 hours, I can feel my voice. Okay. Hannah says, it's funny because I'm eating right now. LOL. Oh, I'm looking forward to eating something after this. Now then, the last good method for a flashback within written prose is something I call the injected moments. Now, this is bold and risky because you are inserting right into the middle of the story a flashback moment. Now then, these need to be specific to what's happening in the story right then and there. This is expanding on the 1 to 3 sentences remembrances, and this is obviously way shorter than a chapter. These should be at most a handful of paragraphs of a character slipping back into the past and being like, so there was this. And one of the ways that you pull that off is that these flashbacks should either be part of conversations that are happening in the moment, or that the flashback is pertinent to the action at that point, and that when you come out of the flashback, the character reflects on that flashback. So, like, let's say there's a fight. It's like ching, 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 like swords are flying, like, oh, this person has an almost unbeatable defense. How can I defeat them? They're just going to trip me down through the use of force, and then I will get weak, and then they will go on the offense and stab me through the heart. I will lose. And then they have a flashback of like their master teaching them of how to overcome defenses. And then they snap to in that moment. They're like, ah, yes, I remember when master taught me such and such technique. I will use it. And now that you've had a flashback to show the audience that technique, the technique now makes sense in the moment of action. So it works. But again, it's risky because you're meddling with the pacing of the story. This is a very risky, bold move to make, these injected moments. But you can make them work. Because again, It's not just simply throwing that moment at the audience. That moment must be interacted with by the characters, because this is their memory. And so there must be some sort of commentary on that memory within the prose when you return back to the main story. Otherwise, it's just an insert and it disrupts the pacing entirely. Now, that I personally don't like going that particular route. I don't like using flashbacks that way. So this is not something that I myself would personally do, but it is an option, and it's one that can be used to good effect if you know what you're doing and if you can make them feel seamless, even though you are jumping to the past at random intervals. So, injected moments. It's risky, but it can be done. And ultimately, most visual storytelling uses the injected moments method, which is why people will write it, because that's what they've seen, that's what they know, but without making it seamless in their own prose. That's why flashbacks usually feel so janky. Normally, flashbacks feel way more natural to the reader when they are part of a chapter header or opening, when they are a part of a dedicated chapter to just an entire memory, or if they are in the briefest of moments, again, just 1 to 3 sentences. That feels way more natural to the reader than the injected moment. But the injected moment can be way more impactful because it gives you necessary information in the moment you need it. So it's relevant and isn't forgotten 10 chapters back. Wafi asks a question: does a narrator talking about the past of a story count as a flashback? Depends, Wafi. It depends. Let's say if the narrator is... So that depends. So I write most of my stories in third person. So that means that I am like the disembodied voice narrating everything. And so if I were to give a flashback moment, that's me more providing world building insight than a flashback. It's technically a flashback, but people would consider it world building or lore building or character building. If the narrator is first person or second person, which is rare to find, but if it's first or second person, then yes. So then saying, yes, and there was this time that I blah, 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 can be a flashback, especially if they take you back to the exact words that were said in that flashback and their movements. Like they literally step back and they're in the memory. Oh, if they just say, there was this one time that Billy and I went hunting and we shot a buck and then the buck came to life and tried to murder us. That's more world building. That's recounting what happened. If it was, there was this time that I went hunting with Billy. Doolulu. Yes, we were walking through the woods, and hey, Billy, what do you think? We're going to be able to find that 8-point buck? Oh my gosh, Bob! I hope we are able to find that 8-point buck. Jane's going to absolutely love it up on her wall. Oh, hey, look, there's the 8-point buck. Okay, let's get down, and then you play throughout the scene. That then is a flashback, a proper flashback being told by the narrator in first person. So that's an example. But if it's just the narrator in first person reflecting on something that they once did, that's not so much a flashback, that's a recounting. Fabio, man, flashbacks that aren't that exact characters. Guess the idea comes with seeing Undertale younger. Roblox, a buck coming back to life and seeking revenge sounds like an interesting story and horrifying. Oh, yes. In fact, actually, there you go. There's an idea for anyone who wishes to write that. Now then, I do have actually something that I wish to share real quick before we get to the writing challenge. Because I think, again, kind of jumping back to like showing you guys like what can be done, for instance, visually, but also in terms of pacing and with action. Because again, especially since anime and manga are like the biggest offenders of let's pause the story for a flashback. Let me show you guys a flashback that's happening in a currently running manga, Make the Exorcist Fall in Love, and why I believe it actually works. So I will need to share my screen right here. Share the screen, yada, yada, yada. Okay, select the window, and we are here with this. Yes, okay. It's going to look really weird here for a second, everyone. Oh, wait. Nope. I don't want that one. I want... Nope. When you want to share the screen, then suddenly things are like, no, we don't want to actually do this. Gah! Okay, here we go. There we are. That's what I want. Okay, so now then, you guys can now see the infinite screens. Let us now hop on over here to Make the Exorcist Fall in Love. I highly recommend checking this one out. This is a fun manga right here. And I am excited for the day when it finally gets an anime adaptation. Hasn't yet been announced, but it is slowly gaining popularity. So, bit of a spoiler, but whatever. So we have one of the great demon lords, one of the 7 deadly sins, Sloth, who has kidnapped our main character, the priest, and is holding him in a bubble where he can siphon off this main character's power to enact a world-transforming spell that will change the entire world into a good dream. Everyone will become stuffed animals. The buildings will be made of cookies, and no violence will ever happen. And everyone will live happily ever after as little plushies. However, the woman who loves him has come to save the priest. And hey, demon lord, give back Mr. Priest. Yada yada yada. Well, they're after some really awkward stuff because this guy's like, wait, this girl, is she into me? Oh, and she's got a big rack. Yeah, never try to interact with a girl this way. You get what's coming to you, just like this guy does. What are you on about? Gross. In any case, the fight is about to happen, and so our demon lord of sloth summons a destructive plushy bear with hammers. Then our love interest summons Hands of Midas, which then proceed to pummel the bear. Demon is thrown off. She then summons Dreams to then come and fight this guy. So we've got the fight going on. Why am I showing this to you guys? Well, because there's a fight going on. So in the moment of this action, the love interest is there to save the priest. She's up against one of the demon lords. She's summoning monsters from her own dreams to fight against this guy. He's summoning his own monsters to go up and fight as they trade words and blows, and the action is going, and suddenly there's a lull in the action. Ignorant of true suffering, you carelessly dismiss the pain of others. You're blind to the darkness of the world, a darkness no flimsy power of love or romance can touch. The only escape from this torment is to never be born into this world at all. Oh, he's one of those types. Yet you women keep giving birth to life, and that's precisely why you are the ultimate unforgivable evil. Eh? You think women just miraculously get pregnant like the Virgin Mary? You're forgetting the guys who get them pregnant, you know? And so, as the fight's going on, we get the typical conversation going, and suddenly the action falls with, I'll tell you about my darkness. Flashback time! And now we're in a flashback to help explain what on earth this sin is talking about, why he feels the way that he does. And we are then given pertinent, important information about how he actually himself once fell in love. Okay, and that's all interesting, and the story proceeds on, and it's very easy in the moment there to say, okay, then, well, that seems rather like we could have had that at some other point in time. You could have given us this information either after the fight to help explain why he said this, or maybe you could have had this important information beforehand. You're pressing the pause button on the fight in order to give us this give us this pedantic remembrance and flashback into how this one demon lord fell in love back in the day. The reason why it works here is it's not simply because, like, boy, you don't remember, do you? Flashback time ensues. But rather, the demon is already on the back foot. The love interest, using her imagination in this dream world, is battering him. He's on the back foot. He's losing, so he's resorting to speaking to try to put her off balance because he's losing. And by speaking, by bringing down now the pacing of the action, it's now been set up for a good, proper flashback. Now, again, if people don't like the flashback, they don't have to like the flashback, and that's absolutely fine. But here within the story, rather than just simply hitting the pause button on the action, there is a descending action through the conversation that the characters have, and the fact that they actually stop actively fighting each other, setting up the flashback. So the flashback itself isn't actually derailing the fight. The fight has actually already fallen into a lull because one of them is losing. And so it works. So again, the pacing matter with flashbacks is always one of the hardest things. You always want it to feel as natural as possible. And so even in visual storytelling, if you just simply jump to a flashback, it can feel extremely jarring. So in this case, within the manga, Make the Exorcist Fall in Love, the battle itself is already slowed down to set up that flashback, thanks to the conversation that the love interest and the demon lord are having. So that there is my last visual example. Now here is your writing challenge, if you wish to take it. I want you to write one of the following for your own story. Either a brief flashback, so again, 1 to 2 sentences, 3 at the absolute most. And this is basically a character doing their thing and then remembering, oh, yeah, okay, I remember this thing. That was important. You can try out a chapter opener or heading, which provides a brief flashback, which is longer, 1 to 5 sentences. Or you can try an injected moment, right up to the point where the flashback becomes important, then write 3 to 5 paragraphs to help give us all the details necessary from that flashback, and then bookend it with what that character does with the knowledge that comes from that flashback. So whichever one you feel would be most beneficial to you as an author, I want you to try out that. And then please leave your response for us in the comments, either to this video, or if you're on our Discord, you can leave it there. And we'd love to see it. Iso says, pretty sure there's a horror comedy spoof called Moose, about a zombie moose who kills people. It was made by the Tundra comic writer. It was hilarious. The Vortex. That sounds great. Fabio, my one and only flashback is a Warrior's Glory Days syncing with the 40-second music, and it's vaguely showing this powerful guy's past adventures and everything. And then the episode starts with him in his current sad state. Very interesting. I like that. I think that sounds really cool right there, Fabio. Good establishing memory and moment to set up this character. So there is the writing challenge for all of you. And I honestly did not expect that we would take almost 2.5 hours to get to this point. Take another drink of water. So I'll leave this up for you guys for just a moment longer for any of you who are interested in writing this down. If you're one of those people who wishes to already write it down ahead of time rather than coming back here to the live stream to find it again. And then we will talk briefly, because we're 2.5 hours in, I gotta save my voice, briefly about setting up battles and executing them. Because after having watched the most recent episode of The Rings of Power and seeing already people talk about the comparisons between the Siege of Eregion to the Battle of Helm's Deep or to the Battle of Minas Tirith, and people saying, how dare you compare them? They're not comparable. To which I say, oh, definitely they're not. One is done really well. The other is done really horribly. But then people like saying, well, this is what's wrong based on this and blah, blah, blah. And I'll eventually have my own dedicated video to tearing this battle apart. But there is already some writing advice that I can give to anyone who wants to write a good battle that can be pulled from the mistakes of what has happened in the Rings of Power. Fabio says he's seeking help of the actual main character, a master, taking offers to train. Basically, anyone. Okay, interesting. I like that, Fabio. I like you're interesting me with your story. Now, what can we learn about how to properly set up a fight and then execute it based on Rings of Power? Well, I would definitely not emulate what Rings of Power has done. This is what I would say is this. I definitely come at writing fights in a different way than many authors do. And the reason why is because a fight can be anything. You can have all different kinds of fights. You can have a verbal sparring. You can have a snowball fight. You can have a lightsaber duel. You can have a shootout at high noon. You can have people fighting across the metaphysical field, throwing their attributes and their imaginations at each other. You can have blob monsters slapping each other to death. You can have a joust to the death. You can have a very violent or very easy game of rock, paper, scissors. There's so many different ways you can do a fight. And as such, each fight is going to be very, very different. You can't just take the formula for one fight and transpose it onto another and have it work. You can't do that. It does not work. You can use that formula for similar fights that you wish to carry out, but you can't, for instance, take the Battle of Helm's Deep and impose it on a very dramatic game of Yu-Gi-Oh! It doesn't work that way, or of Magic the Gathering. And you can't take the drama of a game of Magic the Gathering and impose it on two knights dueling each other to the death. And while two knights dueling each other to the death is very similar to two gunslingers trying to kill each other at high noon, it's also very different because of the mechanics between jousting and two men pulling out guns and shooting each other. So as a result, fights are going to be different from story to story. And so you have to then approach it from a different perspective to really learn what makes a good fight when mechanics can be whatever you want them to be. Right here, Survivor says, I'm full of fight scenes. I want out there. Though Music Brain sure takes a lot of it. And there's one guy versus a horde moments with each of the duo I described earlier. Awesome. ISO, challenge received, challenge accepted. It is time for me to be off. Farewell. ISO, thank you so much for being here. It was great having you here. I'm Omega. Honestly tempted to do my version of the flashbacks in Red versus Blue, where the Reds attack Blues, cause a ship to crash, but with the doctors from Doctor Who. All right, go ahead, write that. Sounds fantastic, I'm Omega. Roblox, brief moment. Fudge remembers eating citizens of Candy Kingdom. They tasted delicious. You know what? Here's the thing. The screams that the Fudge hears as he recounts that is flashback-esque. That's like the very brief 1 to 3 sentence flashback moment, but also it's him recounting to Ragatha, Jax, Kinger, and Gangle the horrible things that he did to this kingdom. So it's a moment of recounting, but those screams are definitely a flashback scream. Fabio, what would you call fights in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, if you've seen that? What would I call fights in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? I would call the fights that I've seen really epic. They're weird, but they work. Because if you're willing to accept the insanity of the JoJo's universe, then you can roll with them, and they're very unique. So what would I call the fights in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? Bizarre and amazing. I need to catch up with all of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I am very behind on what most people have already watched and seen, and that's on me. But from what I have seen of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, yeah, got some good stuff. Good stuff. Now then, if you want to set up and execute a good fight, these are the things that you need to think about. What has led us here, to this moment, to this action moment, to this fight? Then, why are these characters going to fight? Because, I mean, if the world operated the way that we see in action flicks, every time I go to the store, I should be like wielding multiple guns and blasting my way through the dairy section. So that way I can get the milk on sale. But that doesn't happen. Thankfully. And why is it that people don't go all ninja on their neighbors when they go shopping? It's because most people, especially even in fictional stories, realize that violence isn't going to get you through everything, unless you're writing a story where violence is the object of everything, in which case you have to firmly establish that. Most people are not just simply going to accept that two individuals or that two armies are going to come and slug it out. So so you have to, as the writer, you have to explain it. You have to make sense of why these characters are going to fight. So you have to set it up. You have to make sense. You have to make sense of why these characters are going to duel each other. And unless it's Black Friday. Yes, Black Friday is its own weird, crazy thing there, Hannah. But you have to set up why this is going on, and then you have to have consequences. There need to be consequences for your fights, because if they don't have any consequences, then again, like, why are we having these? What was the point? Was someone trying to make a point of something? Was someone insulted? Were they trying to gain something? Trying to kill someone? You have to make sense of that through the consequences of what follows the fights. And here's where you do, and here's what you do. I've got more, you fool. Or if it's, you haven't seen my Bankai yet. Or it's like, you've activated my trap card. Or I actually happen to have a contingent of cavalrymen hidden in the backs of the forest that you didn't see earlier. Whatever it is, like, there's going to be all different kinds of mechanics to the fight, and that'll change from story to story. So what's important is how you set it up, why the characters are there, and then the consequences of that fight. So, for instance, thinking of Rings of Power in the Siege of a Region. Okay, then. So, what's the setup to this epic battle that is about to be had, or is currently being had there in the show? Well, it comes about because Sauron has decided to go to a Region to trick Celebrimbor into making the Rings of Power. And so Galadriel and Elrond must get to a Region to stop Sauron and to prevent the Rings of Power from being made. And then Adar shows up with his army of orcs to kill Sauron. Okay, then. So we understand why these characters are here. Now, and that makes perfectly good sense. Now, where things start falling apart is how the battle has then been set up. The motivations for the characters are absolutely fine. But you can't just hide an army of tens of thousands of people right underneath everyone's noses without making sense of how you hid them. If you had them like be under some great invisibility spell so that way no one could see them, okay, there, you've explained it. They use tunnels to get here. Okay, you've explained it. Or they dropped out of UFOs that they magically happen to have. Okay, then, you've explained it. But when it's just simply, and now here's a massive army. Huzzah! The battle begins. Wait, what? Where did this army come from? Why did no one see this? Why is no one prepared? What the hey is going on? The setup just isn't there. And when characters start acting illogically, so that way plot happens, then that's just dumb. Why could you not hide tens of thousands? What if no one looked that way? Yeah. Because no one looks in the direction of all the big smoke clouds and dust clouds, or where they hear all of that noise coming from. They were all just looking the other way. Wow, it just looks so nice over there. Why would anyone ever want to look in the opposite direction? See, and that's just silly. It's illogical, because someone's going to look, someone's going to hear, and 10,000 dudes hanging out, that's also going to smell. So you're going to notice 10,000 guys or tens of thousands of guys. It's very hard to miss. So you need to explain how on earth we get there to the battle. Set it up. Set up the geography, set up the time, set up the actions of the characters that lead us to this moment, not just simply their motivations. The fact that Arondir, for instance, crosses the entire continent like in a week of like he crosses not just the continent, he crosses the world of Middle Earth in a week. How? Does space and time not exist in this story? I guess not, but like it doesn't make any sense. So it's like, how did he get here? Why is he here? I don't get it. You know, like if it would be the equivalent of dropping Superman into the middle of the story. How? Why? It doesn't make any sense. It shouldn't belong. If you're going to have characters, again, go out and have like a shootout at high noon, then explain to us, how do these characters get here? What kinds of guns are they using? What is the layout of the town? Describe it to us. Show it to us. How do these characters use it? These kinds of things are very important. Now, we have yet to see how the Rings of Power is going to pull off the consequences of the siege of Oregion. But it's also very important to make certain to your audience that there are consequences for the actions of these characters. That if one character kills another, that even if that person was a villain, what are the good and possibly the bad things that come from those actions and those choices? In terms of power-ups. So like, let's say we talk like in anime where characters get power-ups from defeating an enemy. It always becomes very frustrating when then a character doesn't use those power-ups or that knowledge later on in the story. That's one of the things that made, for instance, Bleach kind of frustrating. For instance, like with Ichigo, the Ichigo can move at ridiculous speeds, but he only ever uses his ridiculous speed when it becomes relevant to the plot again, rather than using his tremendous speed to wipe the floor with people later on. Like Ichigo's incredible speed that he uses to defeat Byakuya in the Soul Society invasion arc does not come back into play until he's fighting Ulquiorra, and Ulquiorra beats him in terms of speed. And then again, when he has to use that same incredible speed to fight against Gin, because Gin's sword is the fastest Bankai in the Soul Society. So Ichigo has to move incredibly fast in order to survive. Imagine if Ichigo had been using all of that tremendous speed throughout the story to beat all of his enemies. He would have won most of his fights super, super easy. And so it gets just a little bit frustrating. Or him realizing that he can wrap his Getsuga Tensho around his sword to increase the impact by magnitudes. Why doesn't he do that all the time? He could wipe the floor with everyone if he had done that. So if you give characters power-ups, you need to have that be an actual consequence, not just something that happens to make the fight interesting. Now that they have that power-up, they need to be using it. If they don't use it, then what was the point? Okay, you used it for one cool battle, but now that battle's over, it's just like it makes it feel like all the effort that we went through has become irrelevant. And if a fight feels irrelevant, then it's not a good fight. Fabio, have the villain set up before, and then the attack out of nowhere explained by the clever villain. Mustache twirling. Yeah, it's now time for me to monologue. Roblox is down. Imagine Thanos forgetting he was wearing the Infinity Gauntlet. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, Thanos has the Infinity Gauntlet. Thanos has Infinity Stones, but he doesn't decide to use them. And like, for instance, there are times when he doesn't use the Infinity Stones because he has a point to prove, like when he beats up the Hulk to a bloody pulp, or at one point he makes them think he isn't using the Infinity Stones when really he absolutely intends to. He's just been messing with them to see if they are of good caliber, if they're fighting and how they fight actually lives up to their values, which is when you know you're really dealing with a formidable villain. When the villain's like, I'm going to give you all the advantages you need because I want to see what you do, because I'm just that confident that I can beat you. That can be really impressive in a fight. That's a fun trope to use. But again, yeah, if a character has a special item or a special power-up or whatever that they got from a fight, that thing needs to be relevant again later on. Otherwise, again, what was the point? I mean, anime dude gets 50 moves through the story, only uses 3. Then the rare one becomes useful, and I can do this thing instead. Exactly. That's so frustrating and unnecessary. and it doesn't feel natural to the fight. It makes the character actually seem really dumb. So this is part of like the setup. Know what kinds of powers you're bringing to the playing field. This is something that I will admit, it's a struggle within my Legend of the Ten Lords series, where people can use their magic. Like saying their magic is imagination. Whatever they imagine can become real. And so it's then incumbent upon me as the author to think about what would these people actually think about, and what would they use, and how would other people counter it. Because, for instance, you've got people who say, like, well, why don't I just, for instance, imagine a button that takes away all of your powers? Huzzah, there you go, it's gone. And I actually have within my magic system mechanics for understanding that, for that happening, and for how that can even be blocked. It's like, okay, you came up with your amazing button. Boink. Okay, I just took out the wire. What? There wasn't any wire. There is now. Wait, what? Or your button's sticky. It won't press. Dang it. Or whoever said that who says it's actually real, and then you start confusing the person. Like, there's so many different ways that you can challenge the other person. So you, as the creator, at least in this case me, I have to get very creative, and I have to remember these things. Otherwise, like, if I give one of my characters a really, really cool idea, but then they never use it again, yeah, then that's just dumb. And so, like, I have to always remember that, like, okay, a character can actually do this and it's super cool, but maybe it won't work the next time because someone else is like, oh, so you created a black hole to absorb an entire army. Well, what if the next time that you create a black hole, I turn your black hole into an apple? Boom. Yeah, okay, you went through all that effort of creating a black hole. Now it's just an apple. I will take your apple and I will eat it. Huzzah. And while you've been trying to figure out how the heck I just did that to your black hole, by eating this apple, I now gain extra power from the deliciousness and juiciness of this apple. And so there's no one point for anyone to like think, or if they overthink it, what just happened, then they're going to get steamrolled by the other person who's still imagining, who's still creating, who's still doing stuff. And so that's something that I have to remember as I'm writing, because my battles are incredibly weird, incredibly fast paced. And I have to remember that characters are able to do these kinds of things, or how another character might block that kind of a thing. And again, that comes down actually to the mechanics of the fight. Again, each fight is going to be different mechanically. However, my amazing imaginational powers, being able to do all this crazy stuff while it sounds cool, is ultimately dumb in the story if, again, I don't set up the fights, if I don't make sense of why these characters are even getting into this fight, and then having consequences for that fight. So remember this, any good fight has a proper setup, proper character motivations, and there must be consequences. And the more interesting the consequences, ultimately the more interesting the fight. So, like, for instance, in the Stormlight Archive, there's one duel with, so I love the second book of the Stormlight Archive, The Words of Radiance, for the duels that are had between Adolin and all of his rivals. And it's because Adolin just destroys these people in very fantastic, inventive ways. But there's one duel where he just annihilates this guy. It's like only 2 paragraphs long. He just charges in, shatters the guy's armor, breaks him down, beats him up, and is just all like, and basically has like his own Maximus, "Are you not entertained?" moment. And it's a very, very brief fight, but the consequences of that fight are massive, because the guy who just beat up that guy's cousin decides, "I'm going to challenge you to a fight. You have no honor. You only have bags of tricks." And Adolin's like, "Yes, finally, I get to pull this guy into a fight." And little does he know that guy's setting up a big trap for him. And so the consequences of a 2-paragraph fight begin to spread out over multiple chapters as Adolin gets wrapped up into this big trap and has to fight against 4 guys at once. And it's ridiculous. It's so cool. So consequences of the fights are kind of what makes the fights interesting. 2-paragraph fight, and yet I come back to it because I'm like, oh, I know what's going to happen next. It's so cool. Yes. All right. So Roblox, all I'm going to say is that if you get some OP power, don't forget about it until later. Get rid of it or limit it in a logical way. Yes. Or if you're like me, you just make everyone OP. So that way, okay, you have that OP ability, but I have my own OP ability. Mwahaha. Fabio, things can be insane while keeping it consistent. Amen. 100%. Insane doesn't mean throw out all logic and all the rules. It just means you're doing things in ways that people weren't expecting. Lars' story: character 1 beats other character beats other character to a bloody pulp. Also, character 1. Do you find this funny? Yes, actually, that's actually last night. That was one of the scenes I was writing. One of the characters. So I'm right now writing the first draft to the final book of the series, and I have this, and I'm in the last couple of fight chapters. There's only 2.5 chapters left, and then the big war is done, and then I get to write all of the falling action and the resolution to the series. But in this high climactic moment, as everything is just like super serious and whatnot, one character is like, you know what? No. And so as they're fighting and they're trying, as he and this other guy are fighting, throwing all this kinds of magic at each other and imagining all these things, he's like, man, I got to get past this guy's defenses. You know what, buddy? You could use an extra hand. And he comes around, gives the guy a slap on the butt, and gives him 3 extra arms that now protrude out of his butt. And the other guy's like, what? And then from there, things just start getting weird. And, and so as this guy is now dealing with extra hands coming out of a very unfortunate place, the other guy then takes a pie made of humility and smashes it into his face and forces him to recoil and feel awkward and rejected from just sheer forced humility. He's like, oh, I feel so icky and wrong. And so this guy's just pulling out weird things left and right to throw this other dude completely off balance, so that way he can try to worm in and get in the killing blow. And that's been a fun fight to watch. It's not to write. If it ever gets adapted, my sympathies to whoever tries to animate or adapt this book, because it is wild. If everyone is over super, no one over is. Well, you know what? To a certain degree, yeah. When everyone's super, no one is. If everyone's overpowered, no one is. Here's the thing: is that the overpoweredness always comes about by comparison, because there's always going to be someone who's weaker, who's completely overpowered by the abilities of someone else. When you have multiple overpowered characters competing against each other, it's when it then starts coming down to matters of intelligence, luck, good tricks, knowledge, and all of that to then create very interesting dynamic contests and battles. And that's one of the reasons why I love it when you can have multiple overpowered people facing off against each other, because you can start pulling out all the stops and having real fun. However, at the same time, it's also just a lot of fun to write 2 people having a normal duel with swords. And you can have just as much action and just as much as intensity as 2 guys hurling black holes at each other. Fabio, I guess my weird little massive world ain't that too much weird. Weird, just like overpowered, is relative. It's all about comparison. Okay, so with all that being said, guys, we've been here for nearly 3 hours. It's time for me to wrap up, because I can feel my voice beginning to lose it, and also got to go eat dinner. So, everyone, thank you so much for being here. I hope that you enjoyed our speculations about what will happen for the Amazing Digital Circus episode 3. Comes out in less than a week. Super excited for what we're going to learn, for what we're going to see. Hopefully now you know a little bit more about flashbacks, what you can do, for your own stories. Really do take up the writing challenge and see what you might be able to do. You've seen some examples of the good, the bad, the ugly, the legendary, the inventive, and you can probably find a whole bunch of other really good examples and bad examples that you can utilize. Then on top of that, when it comes to writing a fight, mechanics are always going to be different from fight to fight. Don't get bogged down in the mechanics, except for when you're writing your own fight. But don't come out and be all like, oh my gosh, no, I got to make sure that everything is lined up perfectly well. Make sure that you are setting up that fight properly, that you have good character motivation for them being there, and that there are consequences for that fight. If you do that, your fights are going to largely work out really well. Yes, mechanics will always be its own issue, and that's one of the difficult things, is that because, again, each fight's going to be unique. And so if you're ever interested in what might make one of your own fight scenes either work or not work, please feel free to always share it with us. We'd be happy to comment and give you our help you out to make those fight scenes, to make your stories the best that they can possibly be. So, with all that being said, everyone, thank you so much for being here tonight, today, the morning, wherever you are at. And until the next video, y'all, I bid thee choose.